Howdy.
Hello.
Hello, Governor. Oh,
This is.
I'm State Marshal Gunnar Kane. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yep. And next to him, you have the mayor of Blaine County, Princess Elena.
Lovely to make your acquaintance.
The mayor of Los Santos County, Nino Chavez.
Is the mayor.
Yes.
The princess. Oh, marvelous.
Right.
Yeah, she fits the bill.
Yeah.
Just be careful. Don't call yourself a king. There might be issues.
Oh no, I have just legislated that I can be called the queen.
Oh, marvelous.
Heavens, I wouldn't call myself a king.
Well,
Field
we
Director
all
Dark
justices here as well.
needs to come up
Or
to
some
the
of
main
them.
courtroom.
Correct, sir.
Oh, hello there.
All right, bye.
Hello.
All right. The second field director, Richard Dark, is on his way. He's walking up the stairs now.
What rank exactly is the field director? What's the structure you have over there?
It's director.
Field director is like the assistant chief.
Oh, I see. I see.
We have Director Weiss, who is a justice who's been trying to get out of the position for a while. That's the top. Then you have a field directors, the second. Then you have just full marshals, which are your tried and true marshals. Deputy marshal is like a solo cadet, and or
That's
a PEO.
enough. That's fine. I only needed to know the top. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And so, is there currently a director at all, or is
That's
that
myself.
still not to happen? Oh, there is a director.
Yes.
Well,
Formerly, based on the legislation, a justice had to be the director of the marshals. I was put into that position until we modified the legislation to make it such that an independent director can be appointed, and we are currently in the interview process for that now that that legislation has changed.
Oh, marvelous.
That's such
out
a
of
lie.
curiosity, is there anything that is written down in how you plan to have that legislation changed? You're saying you as the justices will be appointing people. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, so the state marshal's legislation was updated through the normal legislative approval process. The mayors did also give input into that legislation before it was
Red, thank you the 5 gifty.
approved. Like I said before, it had to be a justice that was a director. It is now a unanimous approval of the justices to appoint an independent director that is not a member of the judiciary.
Okay, sure. So is everybody here right now a part of the DOJ or the mayor's office, or either of the mayor's offices, or the marshals, or do we have some stragglers here?
This is the head of summer right here to the left.
The folks back
yes.
here, I'm not sure. Hello.
Okay, that's fine. Could I just have a few of the justices and the field directors, if possible, just come over here for a moment? I just want to have a quick conversation.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right. All right. Oh, yeah.
Did Weiss just not sure me?
Oh, I don't see you.
Dang, that's crazy.
Oh, what the hell, princess?
Oh my god.
What?
I just don't see him.
Hi. You okay, Nino?
Weiss stood
No.
down.
I don't see you.
I don't know.
You don't see me?
Confused.
No.
Nino, do you see Quentin as well or no?
He's right
Quentin
there.
who?
I see Quentin.
Quentin's right
I
there.
don't see Quentin.
I don't hear him either.
I don't hear
Good.
him.
You
I
guys
see
don't need to
him.
see me.
Oh, okay. I see him and hear him
Crazy.
now. He is right in between you guys.
I need a mask.
I'm a shadow.
I can see you though.
How come I can see?
Also, I just got hooed by.
Peters, Gunner.
Gonna come over.
Are we supposed to be on the other side? It's a tattoo.
Oh shit.
Everybody thinks it's a button, and they always try to push it. It's the fastest way for me to collect fingerprints.
Barrett, make sure you're whispering.
People just can't stand.
are we
not
supposed
to
to be on
just
the
touch
other
it.
Please stop yelling. Thank you.
I don't. I think we're over here.
Michael,
Yes.
I can't see anybody.
haven't figured out yet what this is. What are we doing?
Oh no. Yes. This is the impeachments.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I wasn't sure because I know that we were talking about the the voter issues too.
Quick nap.
I don't know if this was the meeting.
Let me run out and back. I thought it was just me, but I think there's a couple people with the issue.
Yeah, I'll wait here.
Oh my god. Honestly, I don't think I want to risk it in case, like, I don't think it's worth, like, risking it. Yeah, because what if I can't, like, reconnect or something, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And the main people we can see.
Tony, it's literally your fault.
No, it's Dark's fault because he said it himself when everybody's having ethics the second he came in. So
Yep, there you go.
That passed, so.
it is what it is.
Tell him to go away.
Probably.
It's not anything on my end because
Told you.
if it was something on my end, then Marshall's
I'll say, Danielson, what side are you on? The Justice's side or Marshall's side?
I'm on the side of shit moving forward.
Okay, so this side, but.
I just sit exactly in the middle, but I don't have my lawn chair.
Hey, how's it going?
You want a lawn chair?
You need a mask desperately.
if it was something on my end, then I would not have noticed.
You know what? I'm gonna
If
leave
it was
this blue.
something on my end, then other people wouldn't have experienced it as well.
Oh, thank you.
Guys, I'm so
It's my
nervous.
lawn chair, but take it.
What's gonna happen?
Yeah, I'm look.
Hopefully something.
Switzerland.
You need to be nervous.
Will there be true change today, or is the system as broken as we expected?
Tony, it's all over.
Oh.
Then I don't have to walk around with a water pistol in my holster.
At least you got their shoes.
Junior, you're making a mess.
Gotta take a picture quick.
I'm putting food in the floor for people. Fucking Michael, dude.
This is how we get kicked out.
Should I throw up a
That's
peace
gotta
sign
be a
behind
hell
that
of a
picture?
selfie. That has to be a hell of
Oh
a
wait, the guy.
Well, just if anyone asks, I want to be able to prove that this actually happened.
$1 million to account 10.
I mean, I hate to say it, but I was gonna ask who the fuck are those guys?
Michael, the county account is 10, right?
Yep.
Okay.
What's up? Is shit about to pop off? I hope so.
What do you expect? Fireworks coming out of his eyes?
Yeah. listen. Transparently, I'm hoping there's a good shit or get off the pot speech.
Please
Have you seen
mark it as
the shoes that the
$1 million
governor's
for
coming in wearing? This man's
number
got
2
waist traps with
Roy
Oh wait, he's wearing
Lowens
Crocs. What the fuck?
Stein.
Yeah, I thought he was wearing Tim's as well.
Crocs. Hey, last time he was like an Hawaiian shirt, so.
Fair.
This man's down on business.
It's fine. He has them in tactical mode.
Then
Oh,
send
fair,
me
no,
a
yeah.
screenshot of it. I can
I'd be
verify
scared of him.
your payment and then transfer the property.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised he's not in shorts and a t-shirt.
You know he's like 140, right?
Wait a minute, can't I just sell it to him like this?
Wait, Nino, how old are you?
I'm sorry. What drew the question? That's
They accused you of being as old as the governor. I didn't accuse you of being as old as the governor.
I didn't do that either because he didn't. hear me.
Quentin did.
Quentin, are you even supposed to be in here?
Okay,
He's a deputy mayor. Yeah.
for asking that question.
Wait, I thought he was with you.
Oh shit! Oh my god! Congratulations.
I bet. Hey, you know what?
I just listen. No, stay here. Do not go outside anywhere near the roads, please. I'm sorry. It was a joke.
Oh my God.
Fuck.
Oh my god. Listen.
I just realized these tiles aren't centered.
Don't know.
Oh,
Don't point that out, please.
Transfer.
I'm
sorry.
Princess, are you a big?
Wait.
Nah, we're good. Cal Mao's not awake.
Like the line of a tile, it like fucks up your camera or some shit.
Wait, actually,
I'm
wait,
just
hold up.
currently a big
Hold up, hold
believer
up.
in middle ground, and
Mhm.
I'm Switzerland.
Yellow.
Hey,
But also
did
the
you
doors
send it
aren't
already?
Even centered.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay, I am, and okay, I'm just waiting for the,
The doors in
for
here
the,
Yeah, I'd already sent it when I saw your text.
Oh, could
so on
you?
there, it's just the comment was house lottery space my name space my state ID.
Beautiful. Could you go and just pull up the transactions and take a photo of it and send it my way?
This is
Yep,
like a 4v4.
should be good.
Beautiful.
That is the.
Oh, it's gonna be great.
That is the actual transaction, and then I have
You got any
the like the
swords?
one as I was sending it as well.
Beautiful. Okay. And what is your state ID is 10719?
Correct.
Okay. I'm transferring now. It's going to be read the state ID for me real quick.
10719.
Okay. Get ready. This is going to pop up on your phone. Upon
All
it
right.
popping up on your phone, you need to hit accept. If it times out,
Okay.
we have to wait till after tsunami.
Okay.
You ready?
Yep.
Ray Lowenstein, number 2. Did you get it?
I accepted. Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's
All
been a
right.
pleasure.
Would you like your name announced as the winner?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. All right. You take care.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
Anytime.
Hey, Sean. You maybe want to go let Justice Hart know that Christmas was 3 months ago and she can take the antlers off, or?
Oh my God. I was thinking the same thing with
I messaged
Yeah.
the last time she was around. It was fucking Christmas.
Same reason Weiss has a winter coat on.
Yeah. Oh my
It's a
God.
nice coat. I wear a coat
Hey,
like
hey,
that.
hey. She might not be feeling festive. She just might be an ooter. Who knows?
Right.
like to invoke my Fifth Amendment right.
What Fifth Amendment?
Is
We have no
aim
amendments.
The
this
implied
program is
one.
aimed
The implied
to
one.
All right.
purchase properties.
Remember the days he used to have antlers?
Note, this program is for first time.
All right.
I need to think deeply about the importance of hydration.
Very important. Hey guys, would it be stupid of me to repeal my legislation that's getting contested just so that the justices aren't too busy to look at any other legislation?
I don't think it should take more than like 15 minutes to review your stuff.
I mean, it really shouldn't, but
But
you know, priorities, I guess.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't care that much about the Lorax legislation, and I would rather them just look at the other stuff.
True. That is a fair point.
I can't say too much about it, Princess. My keyword is mercy.
I feel like
Some
you
stuff
put yourself into this situation.
More like somebody dropped my hat into it, and then they know I can't say no to people that need help.
That's unfortunate. I don't think she knows what she needs help with, though.
If I speak.
Chat, today's been such a fucking busy day, like Excel sheet this, Excel sheet that.
At this point, it's mostly a matter of, I just really like the title. I don't want to just get rid of it because the title's cool.
How did I pull this one out? Oh, that was a direct purchase, wasn't it? It was. That was a direct purchase. And then so far you only asked foundational knowledge, like catching up on legislation, and if we followed the impeachment process. Makes sense. You been boating and yapping most of the day? Well, you know, the thing about this kind of work is you have to yap. Because if you don't yap, you don't actually know how to make a decision. You know what I mean? I mean, imagine if I was golfing instead over the weekend. Wait a minute. Hold up. Ooh, people are already entering into the. Okay. What else do we have here, housing wise? We sent one. The bodega's got to go up. This one's going up. This one's going to go up. So I have to get a walkthrough of these two. My little home, guys. Remember when I bought this?
Mr. and Mrs. Mayor, could I speak with you momentarily?
Yep, absolutely.
Us or him or just both of us?
Both of you.
All right.
Well, I'm curious, coming from the people's perspective, how have the marshals and justices been for you and the process in which things happen, if you have any insight, that is?
When you say, you mean things like just in like to the DOJ in general, or
to an extent, but mainly in regards to the marshal and the processes. Like I said, I mean, I don't know if you'll have any input at all, but I thought I'd bring it up since you are the people's vote.
I'm sure we both do, but I'm gonna leave this one to Nino because he has been dealing with this for so much longer than I have.
Well, both opinions would be good to hear.
Yeah.
Fresh faces and fresh eyes are always good as well.
Yeah. I think it's been difficult, I would say, and so I guess two things. The first is Justice being the director has been problematic. I think that was recognized months ago, around the time Weiss first took the seat. However, he actually stepped down at least a month ago with a official notice, but the intention for him to step down was over 3 months ago. We, at the time of the document updates that are up on the legislation for picking a director, we did contest verbally, not formally, that it should not be a unanimous decision by the judiciary, as it's sort of a mask-off moment to say we have a one way of thinking, right? How do you unanimously pick a new director? They decided on this, despite us saying that doesn't make any sense, and we are now in that position where the marshals have nobody, and I know that both Dark and Barrett attempted to put themselves up, and they were voted no. I believe the vote was 4-1 at the time. So there has been no direction.
Yes, and 1 no is what you're saying.
4 yeses and 1 no.
Interesting.
The second issue that has presented itself is due to the marriage of the two. We've had penal code charges added and fines and times altered in a massive document without myself, Mumbles, the previous mayor, having any input. And that included illegalizing things simply by changing the penal code.
So they've changed the penal code without pushing any legislation to say why or how it's done to be disputed or discussed at all.
Precisely. And this
Okay.
has caused quite a bit of turmoil. I think it's sort of destroyed people's economic outlook. A very deep conversation. But to give you an idea, jump boots were made illegal. Simple tools used by the G6 workers. Jump boots.
Jump boots. Interesting.
Little boots with springs. The claim was, the claim was they come from the cargo ship. I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
Okay.
It was also, the statement was G6 cards are used to break into banks. But once again, given the fact that those decisions were made by the judiciary without any of our input, bad things happen. Fines
Was
are
it
up
not
10x.
based on a case law?
Negative.
Okay, well,
so
they're the only ones that they, I believe, have the authority to pass through. After our last discussions, it was they would be able to pass anything through that is based on a case or some sort of hearing with written reasoning. Otherwise, they would not be able to pass it through instantly. So I'm not sure exactly.
Yes, I believe the argument for some of these was, significant enough police investigation that showed that, a bunch of cases in which someone was caught with something and went to jail, and they essentially equivocated that.
Right. So
That's,
that counts.
that makes sense that they would come to that conclusion, but it should still be written in.
Yes.
If you can't reference where the legislation was changed or the law was changed, then there's no way to dispute it properly in the courtroom. So it creates an issue if they're not writing down why they're doing things.
We made actually that very argument, and we were told that, well, we have the right to change the penal code, and it's in legislation. We went on to explain that you are the mechanism, not the arbiters. Otherwise, there is no point in legislation to begin with.
Well, sure, yes. The penal code is only a form of legislation anyway. It's a written legal binding, just like any other piece of paper that we sign. So it would still need the same process. There's no difference to that or any other legislation.
So the best way I can put it is that marriage has created sort of the police to be able to directly lobby legislative change indirectly through penal code, fine and time changes without any oversight by any other legislative authority.
Okay. Well, that sounds like that's something we could discuss after this, and I would love to hear why they're doing that. And I believe, again, people will generally choose the easiest route to do things and just do it that way. But there was also issues we had last conversation where people were changing and doing things without writing anything. But I assume they just thought legislation is anything that is under the legislation panel. But the meaning of legislation is just written law, and penal code is written law, so it should fall under the same situation. And again, they might not be doing that with that understanding, so I'll discuss that with them and I guess see how that goes. Back to the marshal side of things. Do you believe it would be a better process if it was completely separated from the DOJ as an entity, and the voting process was more of perhaps the marshals could elect a couple of people, the police could elect one or two people, then there would be a formal vote from the people themselves or all officials or something like that, instead of just the
Absolutely.
the mayors, the justices. Sorry.
Tell me if this is going too far, but without going into whatever may or may not be the outcome, I think that a judiciary that has an evaluation every...
Sorry, can you start that again? My head froze for a second. I had a brain freeze. I think it was the iced coffee this morning.
Let me know if this is going too deep, but I think given the whole scope of things, having a judiciary that on a rotation every 3 months must be reelected by the public, but the candidates would be chosen by the mayors, like nominated, with a very strong requirement base and voted in would be a massive solution. It would ensure the people hold people accountable for doing what, they're put into place for.
Would
But-
that be just justices or judges as well? Because that's already an
Yeah.
elected process.
Oh, justices, yes.
Okay.
With a requirement being you need to have been a magistrate, you need to have done this many trials, etc., whatever that is. But then in regards to the director, as you mentioned, I think giving all the power to the people is very dangerous on that aspect. But
Of
the
course.
elected officials nominating alongside law enforcement, I think, nominating, and then perhaps a vote. I'm going to be honest. I think I need to think on this a little bit.
Yes.
Governor, I believe it's
yes.
a question. There's two, as far as I see it, there's two roles that the marshals play. And depending on which role is more, I guess, which one is their jurisdiction, it changes things. But it seems as though they've got the role of ensuring that there is not corruption within the police departments, pushing impeachments, as they are doing, but also taking care of threats to the state. And I believe that the taking care of threats to the state implies that there should be some relation between them and the state itself, but also additionally, if they are to be looking into the police departments and corruption within government institutions, then they should absolutely not be a part of a government institution.
Yes. The way it was all founded, the marshals, was when there was the collapse of government. So I don't think it was necessarily intended that it would stay like this. But often when there's a lot of large moving ships like this, things sort of get forgotten or swept under the
Yes.
rug, and I believe this might have been one of them.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm not sure what the easiest process here would be. Perhaps I'll get everybody out here and they can... I've asked people to bring up bullet points, so if you guys have some points that are more directed at the marshal system at the moment, that would be good. We can discuss that. And then the other things we can look at afterwards, just so we can get this part of thing sorted out or whatever. Otherwise, we'll probably be here for 3 hours again.
Yep. Agreed. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll go chat with them and see where they're at. Maybe they've already worked something out, and we'll see where we go.
Okay. All right. Beautiful.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying. There's, what do you call it? Security of the state versus
I'm not sure how we should do this. If we would like to
investigating.
have some points brought up, and maybe we can discuss. And
Oh shit!
I'm not
I think
sure
it might
if-
almost
start in
feels
a
like
second.
those
what
need
was
to be
discussed
two
here. If you
different
think that would be a good
I
process,
agree.
or what do you guys want to have happen here? I believe there's a few issues everybody has brought up that I think is fair.
I about left out.
But I mainly want to focus on the
Oh.
Marshall situation, the director,
Yeah,
and
hi.
how that process is tuned.
You okay?
So, is there questions or
Yeah, I just
points
didn't know
that
if
I tried to be
we have fault
concise,
with here
even
that,
though I knew
either
the
side
list
would
was
like to bring
big.
up? And if so, I guess we can. I'll stand up there so people can listen to the conversation. Also, we can ask the mayors if they want to make any points too.
Oh
I'm
fuck!
assuming there's something you guys
Oh
want
my
to
god,
discuss.
Michael, where are you?
Kidding me?
Touching
right-
your right leg.
Right
Okay.
beside you.
I need the bullet points ASAP. Fuck. It's a good thing we had it together, right? For Barrett.
Yep.
Send me an email and then I'll.
Uh-huh.
I did bring some of it up, and the crazy thing is, he literally brought up exactly the points we've been bringing up for 4 months. That included the penal code changes.
No idea.
He's like, the fines and times never should have changed. Anything shouldn't have been added. He did say maybe they
Basically-
didn't know. And
Basically, it should have been done the same way I did mine.
yes, exactly.
So I have the comprehensive document. I'm going to quickly give you high-level bullet points at the top. Can I, 2
Yes,
minutes fine?
yes, yes.
Yep.
Sure.
I think we strike a pretty decent balance of that internally. Ultimately, that is up to you to make a decision as to whether or not you feel it is impeachable or whether what activity you'd like to see there. But that's really the main open issue, I believe. Barrett, if I'm wrong, you feel free to correct me.
Yeah, I mean that was the foundation. That's essentially what we needed. What I wanted to address with my impeachments was the concerns about not having public-facing justices. Like I said, we have Murray all the time. Everybody knows who Murray is. And when I talk to different people, different members of the public, and they express their concerns about, I only ever see Murray. Who are all these justices? And they see new legislations going up with these names on there, and most of them can't even put a face to a name. And so that's the foundational reason for this impeachment was we want to see that people want to see their justices, the people who are making decisions in their life.
Yes.
And so for me, the best course of resolution is acknowledgement that yes, there is a lack of public-facing justices, and a pledge to have more public-facing relations with the general public and the people that they make decisions for and they serve. And we call it there. I mean, that's a successful impeachment. An acknowledgement that something is wrong and that a pledge to do better,
Well, I have a couple. How many extras? How many justices are there altogether at the moment?
4. The 4 of us here.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, I do want to ask a few questions. Either way, maybe I'll get the mayors over here. I am curious on a few things. So, let's just move over to the tables behind us. I'll get them over. I'll ask a couple of questions because I do want to have I wouldn't say a vote, but a show of hands on a few things that that I've already seen that I believe could be issues that people have raised, and just see where we go from there. The reality is, I think there's a longer conversation about the justice part of things, but I'm still curious about the director and how it is attuned, I guess, with the DOJ and its original intentions and whatnot. So
Fines and times, Michael.
just we'll come over here.
Enumeration of the amount, the new charges.
Mr. and Mrs. Mayor, would you mind coming over here, please? Sorry, Princess Mayor.
Yep.
Governor, do you want this
Queen.
open to the general public? Because it looks like there are some extra visitors in the back that walk.
That's fine. At the end of the day, the people are the ones that have created this place, and they should have control and vision on things. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and I would like to, if you agree with what is said, I'd like that you raise your hand, and if not, you can just leave your hand lowered. Do we think, as justices or any voting procedure, oops. Okay. Where was I? Oh, for justices and their voting procedures, who believes that they should be public votes? Is in any vote that the DOJ or justices vote on, the voting and the name should be made public.
And we do that by way of signatures on any document. If anybody that votes in the affirmative, their signature is attached to it.
That's not true.
Okay, and
Things that are shot down or barely pass.
well, that would depend. I would say anything that is
no way they're
voted yea or
lying
nay.
straight.
Like most things that pass a bill or something like that, generally you will have a number, an account, and you could or should, in my opinion, be able to see who has voted for what, if it's of significance, of course. For instance,
Oh, sorry.
sure, go ahead.
I was going to ask, because there's something that Nino and I have been doing in that regard, but I think it would be, it would make sense to me if, I think it'd be a beneficial change if, rather than having all the signatures be on a singular host of legislation, if they could be separately added to ensure that there's not any sort of question as to whether someone has actually signed on, with all changes considered, and or whether it's just sort of passive acceptance.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, assume if it's signed with their name, it's an agreement. It's they have said
Right.
yes to it, right?
There's not been any issues of that I'm aware of, at least, of somebody's signature being applied to something where they didn't actually agree to it.
Sure. I think that still arises from the who
McNee,
voted
raise
no
your
things.
voice!
It would be good. For instance, if we want to stem out corruption, if it was to ever occur in the future, if people were being paid money under the table and they were voting no, how would we ever know who was doing what without requesting a FOIA or something like that? And it seems ridiculous considering it's a public voted process anyway.
If it's something for legislation, I completely agree where that's something that's public facing. I think there are some things that we as justices vote on that's more internal run things that maybe don't necessarily need to be
of
public.
course.
Like, for
Yes.
example, the director of the Marshals position. If there's certain people that vote no against a particular candidate, that could severely affect their working relationship with that individual on an ongoing basis should that information be made public.
Who cares?
That that could sway a justice from potentially not expressing their full opinion or voting no in fear of the way that would affect their relationship with that particular
That's how it
candidate.
works in the United
Whereas
States.
by keeping that type of internal vote private, that allows the justices to more freely express their actual opinion without fear of retribution or affecting personal relationships.
I'm curious.
I would personally disagree because I feel like we're all professionals and we can try our best to look past any high school drama in that matter. And but hey, I could be mistaken looking at LSPD.
The mayor's having to publicly disclose their internal discussions and communications about who they choose for chief of police or sheriff.
So, think about it like this: from my perspective,
We do that already.
Director role. I'm curious. Do you not see a conflict in a way in which you can control the department that can control you, so to speak? Do you not see the conflict there in itself?
I don't think the department controls us. Any citizen and any law enforcement officer, whether the BCSO, LSPD, or even just any individual citizen, can bring forward an authority conduct review or an impeachment to hold us accountable. It does not have to be the Marshals. The Marshals are the law enforcement arm of the Department of Justice, just like Los Santos County has the LSPD and Blaine County has the BCSO. The Department of Justice has the Marshals to effectuate its law enforcement mandates and demands. But any citizen, any law enforcement agency, not just the Marshals, can hold us accountable by way of impeachment and authority conduct review. That is why that was designed.
Totally understand that, but an impeachment is completely different to the point I'm making. They can do anything in terms of laws, investigations, and other things on you, just like anybody else could. But if you're in power over them, that creates a conflict. How can they investigate people that have power over them properly?
Is that not inherently the same with the mayor's office, sir? They also pick their own sheriffs and chief of police.
Right,
and I think
but that's their faction. That's what I'm saying. The point is, they are in control of their county and their
Why are
being.
they
But the idea of the marshal. Oops, sorry, sir. You know what? You deserve it for typing in caps anyway. The point is, the Marshals is not meant to be the same entity as the justices. While it is a part of the state, they're meant to be two factions completely separated. Correct?
Yeah,
that was not their original intent.
I'm gonna fucking kill his ass.
Implemented under Angel, they were intended to be one and the same. We have
that is not
dictated
correct.
that bit of. That is how
The
it
reason,
was legislated.
Yes, it was legislated in a way that they would run it because the entire city was almost ran into the ground, and we needed somebody from the state to protect if things were to go south. It wasn't. It wasn't necessarily designed in a way in which it was meant to stay like that. It was meant to evolve into what the people would want and hold people accountable, and that's why I'm saying. I feel there might be an unnecessary conflict. Well, think about this. What would be the negative in a situation where the justices, the police department, and the marshals could, if a new director was to be needed, that they could all put someone forward and then they would be voted on by the officials. That would be PD, justices, and the mayors.
I mean, I'm in the support of more public voice, to be honest.
I'm just trying to understand if you feel there would be a negative to that over what we currently do, because I feel like there is questions and has been questions raised that I've heard, and people do consider there could be a conflict if it's run by the justices in a way that they control who is put into the director.
I think it's no different than the mayor choosing who the chief is, or the Blaine County, or the sheriff. I think the justice choosing who the director is not an unreasonable, burdensome, or oversight.
How does a justice become a justice at the moment?
By unanimous vote of the other justices.
Right. And how does a mayor become a mayor? The people.
Election. Mm-hmm.
So there's a very big difference. The people are in control of the mayor's office. They put their faith in them to do that. The people do not vote you into that process at all. So the comparison isn't quite the same. If we're a democracy and the vote is what counts, the people should have more of an opinion. And I believe the mayors
it requires the governor to come here and to tell them shit.
Input on what
That's so obvious.
I agree with that. And I think for the lower level law enforcement agencies, that is wholly appropriate. I do think that given the level of influence and easily how easily swayable the elected positions can be, especially with the fact that they cycle out every 3 months, that would cause a great deal of instability to an institution that needs to have a lot of stability in terms of holding the other law enforcement agencies that are subject to that constant turnover accountable. And I think being that under the guise of the Department of Justice makes that more possible.
I'm curious, how long ago was the director removed? The original director?
She stepped down. I don't know.
Nino's first term
in December.
Yeah. November.
Maybe a bit before that, yes.
Yeah,
So,
November-ish.
4 or so months, and you're worried about the mayors
5.
having more input on something like this.
The longest part of that was getting the new legislation put into place, which was an outcome of having to get the mayor's input and advice and sign off on so that it didn't get contested.
I don't think the point is. Well, we could discuss that later, I guess. But I do understand the point in a way, but I believe, well, at least in my opinion, it should be a separate entity. And I get that.
I'm gonna kill this guy afterwards.
Well, actually, what do you mean by what you said in terms of it causing turmoil, essentially?
Well, I think that so. One thing I'd like to point out is,
bro, I'm gonna. This is
directly as the director of the
tailspin lies.
The process as it was intended to work has worked. Barrett has filed an impeachment against me without fear of retribution, despite the fact that I am his boss and could fire him at any moment. Now, I'm not saying it should stay that way. I'm not saying the justices should be able to remain in a position where they are the director of this department. I agree that there needs to be a level of separation, whereby the justice appoint a director, but once that director is appointed, they are in a bit more of an autonomous role, in that they don't answer to the justices on a day-to-day operational level in any way, shape, or form. I'm completely in agreement with that separation. But even without that separation, the process of allowing for an impeachment has worked. There is no undue influence that the justices would have over the department to prevent them from holding us accountable. The fact that we're having this meeting right here is proof that the system works, even with us in a direct position of power.
How many different votes and people were put forward for the director role in the last 4 or 5 months?
It only got put forward once the legislation changed to allow it to not be a justice. As soon as that was put forward, which was on the 20th of February, I put forward 2 candidates. I put forward first Dark, and then secondly Barrett. For different reasons, neither of those managed to get a unanimous approval. And frankly, once the justice that brought forward the concerns for each of the 2 brought forward their concerns and made the other justices aware of those concerns, it was almost a unanimous vote against confirming either of those 2 individuals, at which point the decision was made to open it up to interviews for any individual with PD command experience. And that is
Hart has 0 hours on duty. Weiss has 11. McNee has 34.
Before we go too much further away from it, the statement about I didn't fear retribution about it. Anyone who's been around and talking to me can attest to I have been doom spiraling like crazy about it.
Doom spiral all the time.
Yeah,
that's your constant state of existence.
But I also,
it's.
yeah.
I just want to correct that. I did not fear retribution about it. I
Okay.
have feared retribution about it.
Have you
but I
faced any
felt the
retribution?
Can we
I
please
have-
let him talk?
Yeah, I'm feeling a little bit of retribution, but I mean, that fear is there, you know. But I felt a need for the duty to be done, and that's why I went ahead and filed them anyway. Because I was like, you know, if I get removed, I mean, Nino can probably attest. I've been dooming about that. Even Dark can attest to it. I've been dooming a little bit about that, being like, well, I probably won't have a job next week. But hey, it had to be done.
Would that same
now,
fear exist if once the independent director were to be nominated?
How do you mean?
I mean, you're saying you had fear of retribution based on the current system, but that is with the fact that you impeach a justice and the justice is the director. In the event that the director is not a justice, does that solve that concern?
Well, if the justices can appoint a director that they can direct and be like, hey, we want to approve you, but you know, as soon as you get the director position, you get rid of Barrett. You just do us that little favor.
That's a good idea. We should write that down for our interviews.
And it's not saying I think any of y'all would, but there is, of course, that possibility. And I don't know too many of y'all too personally that well.
Okay.
Anyway.
Either way, I think the hypotheticals and whatnot of what could be, we could discuss for a while. I'm still, I mean, I can understand the point, but I think perhaps there's something further to be discussed. At least in the way that the director role is written. It might be something that's thought on. I don't want to be rash or anything, but I do want to read over some things and whatnot. But is there any other points otherwise that we have issue with that anybody would like to bring up at the moment? One by one would be great.
Regarding
if we can quickly go through.
or separate topics? Yeah.
So when it comes to the impeachments themselves, I think there's the way I see it is even if justices were to lack in work because they're doing other things, I think that's something we need to deal with as a people, and it's something that should be fine. But what creates the issue is what was discussed as unanimous votes and things like that that make it difficult or could make it difficult for things to flow smoothly based on those situations.
Exactly.
I don't think it's worth removing justices if they are doing work here or there, or having some sort of fine or whatever arise from something like this. Generally, for me, an impeachment is a way for us to discuss something, and obviously, if it's criminal, then there'd be issues there. But it shouldn't always be deemed as the worst. Oh, sorry, I just hate Marshals sometimes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry. The point I was making is we shouldn't consider a hearing or discussion like this as something that is always going to be negative, or the outcome if somebody is, if there is an issue that the worst thing will happen. And that's why I say I think from what people have said is one of the core issues was just that the voting process or certain things could be sluggish. And for instance, 4 or 5 months for a director in a department is an issue. Whether or not that is underlying based on purely the lack of justices or something like that, it's that's what we need to discover, I guess. But yeah, I mean the way I see it is just look at these as a formal discussion or a way that we can discuss things and push things through without an issue or something arising from it either way. So if you have something to speak on this, Mr. Mayor, maybe we can go in a circle that way and
okay,
try to address things simple and clean and go from there.
Okay.
Just so you say, I don't expect a hearing from the impeachments to happen. I might look over things or whatever, but there's there's going to be no worries of removals or anything like that based on inactivity. So
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of the impeachments was not to remove anybody. I mean, I see a successful impeachment just being an acknowledgement that something is wrong and we're working to correct it. That's literally what I see as the best resolution for an impeachment.
Marvelous.
There is one separate from that an issue that but I'm sure the mayors they have a proposed legislation up right now with regard to the voting process for general elections for the mayors. When I was brought in as a justice, I was given the information from the prior justices that the state had indicated a directive that individuals should only be able to vote in one mayor election or the other. Essentially, it would either be a Los Santos resident or a Blaine County resident. And absent some way of actually formalizing residency, the way that was effectuated, that you only get one vote, is by putting both mayors' ballots up on the same ballot so that you could only vote for a Los Santos County mayor or a Blaine County mayor. You couldn't vote for both. The proposed legislation is supposed to separate that, and the only reason we did it that way was because, like I said, that was how I was told that the state wanted it.
I don't think they want Nino to talk.
So if it is the way, if that is the way the state wants it to be done, and they only wanted to have one vote for one or the other, the proposed legislation would cut against that pretty significantly. I'm not saying it shouldn't be that way or one way or the other. I just want to get an idea of what the intention is so that we do things appropriately.
Unless it's written in the Constitution as a change, we as the state don't really care. The people, again, should be voting on these sort of things, and that's where the power should be coming from as much as possible. So whatever you guys come up with will be what is there. We can have an opinion of the state and give our a direction of what we believe could work, but we don't really have an opinion on that at the moment.
So the state has no issues with individuals voting in both elections for both mayors. If I may, at that point, and maybe I'm crazy here, and the mayors can tell me if I'm completely off base. Is the 2-county system working?
Oh,
I agree with Weiss on this one, and we've talked about this before. The 2-county system.
Wait, what?
And that's why I did some hesitation towards the electoral reform. What ended up being the reason that I signed on to it was because the original change to have it be each person can only vote in one election may have been done maliciously, and so just in the sake of for the sake of restoring justice, it made sense to return it to two separate elections. But in that same regard, the ability of people to vote in both elections is going to ensure that the population of Los Santos is always going to outweigh the population of Blaine County in any sort of legislative vote. And that's
I want people to talk.
Going to mean that
you want them to put the stuff out, and then you say no.
Blaine County is always going to be kind of subject to the whim of Los Santos County unless there's some drastic infrastructural changes.
I'm curious, if you were in Blaine County as the mayor right now, and you were to draft legislation that said
fresh banana autism
something along
out.
the lines of, hey, you vote on a mayor election involving our county, you can only vote from our county. What would be stopping you from doing this?
There's no way to effectuate that.
Sorry.
People would have to decide on their residency in one county or the other.
Right.
Whether or not it's either dependent on property ownership,
That
in which
is
case
not correct, though. So you, as a mayor, can pass through legislation based on your county with no opposition. Is that not how it works? Unless it's based on a legal standing in which the DOJ can oppose it. Is that not what we discussed last time, Mr. Chavez?
I believe we began that topic, and then I think we got sidetracked.
Okay, well, let me just read the Constitution very quickly. Blaine County shall have legislative authority over its jurisdiction. Okay, do we understand what this means?
Absolutely.
The legislative authority. That means they have authority on their legislation. And if they are to pass legislation that is based on their authority alone, then you cannot oppose it. It is put in, and then you only can draft something afterwards to oppose it, just like case law works for the DOJ.
I believe what Princess is saying is that by allowing people to vote in both elections, the
Right.
majority of the population being in Los Santos,
I
being
understand
able to
that. You're
vote for the
missing what
county
I'm
mayor.
saying. She can pass a law that says the county can only vote in their own county. That's what
The
I'm saying.
reason
There's nothing
we
stopping
want
her from doing
Coil-
that.
You're in.
I don't
There's-
know. You
there's-
can work that
Everybody
out
has an
yourself.
apartment.
That's yeah. It
That's
ends
the
up
problem
being
Yes.
the issue more than anything. It has nothing to do with.
We want Coil to
elections.
hear
The
this.
issue with the two-county system is that Blaine County does not have the infrastructure to support itself, so we are always going to be subject to the whims of Los Santos County.
Let him feel our
whether or
pressure
not the elections are separate. We
and the
have
pain.
to- we always are going to have to.
This is strategy.
Try our best.
If I
to,
speak,
I guess, appease Los Santos County. And luckily we have, Nino is very, supportive of Blaine County. And so it's been doable, but depending on the mayoral choices for both counties, it's still, we are in the Guam situation. Blaine County cannot support itself without financial help from the DOJ or Los Santos County, because we do not have sources of income.
Yeah, people can't live in Blaine County because you have to get food all the way downtown.
There's no
That's true.
the two county system as it exists without the infrastructure in Blaine to support it having its own residents, its own voting system, its own everything really. At least in my humble opinion, the two county system is not working.
This is a state building, so it's not exactly here just for Los Santos. So the voting process is equal for both. But I understand the issue, I guess, being is you cannot tell who is voting from Blaine County when they are to vote something. Is that
that is
what you're
correct?
saying?
Even if they drive up there, let's say
if I could bring some context right after that.
Go ahead, Nino. It's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah. There was an attempt made to introduce residency roughly 7 months ago. I think this is before, Weiss, McNee, etc. Were brought in. At the time, it was shut down. And the manner by which it would be done is you would go and, very similar to other ways we put things in, you would go and register. It would go into a directory. And then when the votes came in, we would match up against it. Simple pivot table.
Yes, I'm curious. Why is it not possible that you could create a registration system yourself in which people would come on a day and register to vote?
Yes,
like the good old-fashioned way to do it, and you could essentially register voters yourself, and they would be the only ones that would count based on their state ID or something. The references from the government could be done based on state ID to confirm the votes, but I believe it wouldn't be that difficult to have all 7 people from Sandy Shores register to vote, right?
Absolutely.
I guess the issue there would be the only difference between that system and the current system would be that you couldn't decide to change residency between elections. The way it currently works, you can choose to decide that you're a resident of Blaine County and choose to decide that you're a resident of Los Santos County. But the way of doing that, instead of registering, is just vote for a candidate from that county. And what we've, kind of presented is that the reason it doesn't work isn't necessarily because we don't want Los Santos people voting in Blaine County. It's just that the two-county system itself is always going to have that issue of Blaine County not having the abilities to support itself, and so it's going to generally depend on Los Santos County. So the Los Santos County election is going to always be more important.
Why can't the Blaine County support itself? In what way do you mean by that, ma'am?
Okay, so our sources of income for Blaine County, we have the taxes on property, the asset fees. However, all of our property is currently owned, and
None of this really matters.
And we cannot increase or decrease the amount of property that is, without amending the Constitution and changing the property rights. We cannot do anything about the derelict properties. We also have U-Tool, 24/7s, and clothing stores, which I will also point out that the clothing stores up north are a secondary option to the paywalls down south. So we do not, if anyone has the option to go to paywall, why would they go to, the non-paywall clothing stores? So our only ways of making money are through those things. I have tried to supplement that by offering, and quite legitimately, the way that we have been making most of our money is through offering honorary lordships over 10 by 10 square meter plots of land on Mount Chiliad, where people get a little contract saying that they're the lord of a little bit of Mount Chiliad. That's been kind of our number one way of getting income. I've also passed legislation that allows us to actually make money from hunting and fishing licenses, because prior to my legislation, that was going to Los Santos County. We don't have any ability to construct significant, tow yards, car dealerships, anything that makes Los Santos County money. I will tell you that the differential currently is Blaine County has about $10 million in the account. Los Santos County, Nino, correct me if I'm wrong, has over 400 million.
Yeah, I mean the thing is though, I getting into the economics, I don't want to downplay. Yes, we have 400 million, but I think a big part of it is what is the expenditure, and that's an important thing to weigh. While Los Santos County may have, I think, $430 million, we issue very little expenditure out. In fact, I think it was not until the recycling program that got into place that we were not able to maintain green. But the subject matter was the election. And the economics of things, that's important, but I think a lot of that comes down to balancing the budget. How big is the BCSO? Should they have authority in the South and the North? And that's a huge other topic. To drive back to the election point, yes, that is still sitting there. I think that election legislation, the question that's being asked there to your governor, is we would like to go back to 2 separate ballots so that there is no gerrymandering. As has been sort of highlighted in this conversation, people will go and vote for the mayor in the North in order to get somebody in place. So, for example, there can be a third of Los Santos County that wants to get a secondary mayor in, and they will all flood the vote into Blaine.
Yes, I understand that. I'm still don't understand how many properties are in Blaine County exactly. Do you know?
I believe Barrett's probably the better one to
Yeah.
ask for that.
I can get you the exact number here in just a moment.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
think
little
so,
more
but-
than 150.
Nino, though, if you had people registered, they'd still only be able to vote in one election or the other, right? Like,
Well, it would depend on the legislation.
Yeah,
the thing is, if
exactly.
there's 150 houses, so to speak, if you had people register, have their address, and you could mark in your own legislation a maximum of 2 people per address can vote, do you not have a system in place already that can limit that?
There is no system, as
no.
the system was shot down by the previous judiciary, and we did not
Right,
reopen
right.
that.
They
topic.
cannot stop the legislation being passed from the Blaine County mayor. Nobody can stop that. I don't understand.
No,
If-
I believe they were told, and this is going, I
103.
believe Angel was the one dealing with at the moment, was
Yes.
that the state was not going to support that infrastructure change necessary to effectuate that legislation.
Right. So the state wouldn't support it. We wouldn't register your voters, but that doesn't stop you from doing it.
The way I see it, though, Governor, I don't really see a problem with Los Santos County citizens voting for a Blaine County mayor if it means, because people benefit from Blaine County. Blaine County is a lovely place where we have a lot of people go to visit, and I don't really see this as a more significant issue. Honestly, if it comes down to it, people voting in both will hopefully everyone, or the vast majority of people, will have whatever's best for the county in mind when they vote for the mayor. I don't think that people are going to actively try to, vote for.
I'm confused on what we just
mayor.
talked about for the last 30 minutes. Wasn't that the entire issue?
So the registration of votes issue, the issue when we get the voting results from an election, we don't get any information of
I
who
understand
voted
that.
for what. We only get a number.
I understand that. But if there is no dispute on who is voting on things by both the mayors, then why are we even having this discussion?
That's a great question.
Both mayors are asking for people to be able to vote on both elections. That was brought to you because I guess there was some question of whether that's something that the
Yeah, so
justices have the
we've been
ability
working
to
off
accept.
of basically guidance from, the bygone justices of the state was under the. We were under the impression we were kind of mandated by the state to have a separation on the voting of counties. If that mandate isn't coming from the state and you're saying otherwise, then we can.
That's what we needed to clarify.
Yes, nothing. If it's not in the Constitution or written by us, then we have not enforced anything. It will either be in legislation forced by us or in the Constitution itself. So you are free to do whatever you wish. And if there is a registration of state IDs through the voting process, those state IDs can be correlated if it was to ever go to that point. We
Thank you.
wouldn't,
Oh my
create something
God.
that separates the two as a state. If you want to register voters, you can do it yourself, and you can do it in legislation. It's what we're saying.
Thank God. Chat,
So
see,
I
this
just want
is
to
why I'm
confirm
not
something right now.
talking.
When you say that it's up to us or up to the justices, Nino and I have already signed on to this legislation. The only thing that we were waiting for is the constitutionality check and I guess the contest period. But if you're saying that there's not a state mandated constitutional issue with this, then it just is dependent on the justices now
No, I mean that was the
passing that through the
constitutional concern.
constitutional issue.
Yeah, if that was the constitutional concern. If there is none and you guys want to have it be that way, that's fine. I mean, do keep in mind that opens up the, and I know you're not running, but I'll use you as an example. If Nino was running for the Los Santos County mayor and he, the majority of the population of the state was going to vote for Nino to be the Los Santos County mayor, and Nino wanted to have a puppet in the Blaine County mayor spot, and he said, vote for my good friend XYZ for Blaine County mayor, that gives the one mayor of Los Santos County effectively control of the whole state.
That already can happen.
Yeah, and I want to just also say
This
that
makes it much
if Nino's going to pay his puppet, then that's going to be the best thing for Blaine County.
Is that as bad as 5 people voting on something behind closed doors to make a director of one of the most powerful institutions in the state?
Yeah. I think they're different things, but I see the point.
Yeah.
Like I said, if you wanted to be that way, that's fine. I think it goes down to also kind of what Elena and I were talking about is it kind of makes Blaine County pointless.
That's
sure.
That is the tough one. Yeah.
I think either way, listen,
no, it's
the
not.
point is,
Come on.
that's what it is. Okay, you can pass legislation as your own authority. It says
Bruh,
that in the Constitution. If there needs to be a registration process, you can do it. We're not holding you back.
How do you know
okay,
that?
so,
Like what?
Unless it comes directly from the state, and we say, "Hey, don't do that. You can do what you wish." That's how the law works, and that's how it's written, and it shall stay like that. Okay?
Yeah.
If we all wanted to agree to change the Constitution, what does that process look like? What
We make it
that's
up.
not been made clear.
Yeah, can
Do
we-
you have
can
to get
we make that
involved?
process?
Can we all make a decision on how to change the Constitution? How does the constitutional amendment happen?
You make legislation.
Yeah. We have some
legislation
in
has to
common,
be
actually.
constitutional. So if there was
Correct.
a principle in the Constitution that we all agreed we wanted to change, that we couldn't do
Yes.
that by legislation because it would be inherently unconstitutional.
Why
How do we
is this? I am dying. Like,
well, in what circumstance would
this is
would
hurting
this
me
occur?
right
What
now
is the
so
issue in the
much.
Constitution that you would
Well,
want to change,
number one,
because it's always possible that it could happen.
And it's
Let's
so
say we all
much
agreed we wanted
opinion
to abolish
for just
Blaine
not.
okay, well that's not nice.
I'm just saying in general, like if we agreed
I
Blaine
get it.
County was pointless, we wanted to just completely change the way that it's a fundamental aspect of the Constitution.
I
What would
think
that process
it,
look
may
like?
I. There's a lot of very important topics that I think we do need to discuss, and I think there. I don't want to downplay what you're saying there, Weiss, but these are a lot of hypothetical as a lot of these things could happen. We have myself and we have Princess representing the people, the director Sama behind us, and we understand the will of the people. They speak to us actively. I know Princess is around like almost 8 to 10 hours a day. I'm around 12 hours a day. And there's a lot of pressing issues that need to be reviewed and discussed. And I think if there are things in the Constitution that are problematic, we definitely have the avenues to bring those things forward. But I think unless those things come
find that
forward,
a prevalent issue.
Yeah.
Because
think,
there are certain ones that we're currently looking at, but constitutional amendments currently have no method of happening. And if we try to push a constitutional amendment, it's going to be unconstitutional because it'll change the Constitution.
It is not necessarily unconstitutional to have an amendment done. It has happened before. It was rewritten. Let's have a look on 7th of the 10th, 2024, as you can see. So if it is signed by the state and the will of the people wants something changed, it can be changed. But I do still see, even under that circumstance in which the Blaine County did want to submit to the Los Santos County, they could still do that in writing in legislation. And just pass something that say we now submit under the guide of Los Santos County. So it could still be handled, in my opinion, in the Constitution. So
Do you say that that requires a signature of the state? What does that
not if
entail?
it's legislation, no.
So that would require only both of the mayors to agree to it? A constitutional change?
Well, it depends on no. I'm saying the legislation would. It's not constitutional. It would still be on the Blaine County level. But if you were to write legislation tomorrow that says the Blaine County is going to fall under the power of Los Santos County, I don't see why that would be unconstitutional.
Yes, thank you.
If the people could vote and say no or impeach or whatever, like any other legislation.
Before it went to a vote, it would be a constitutionality check, and then I, theoretically would argue that that would conflict with the language that says the Blaine County mayor is responsible for these things, and if they're trying to change it to make it such that somebody else is responsible for those things, that inherently conflicts with the Constitution. So then we, as the Department of Justice, would have the responsibility to say, no, that is unconstitutional.
So who would be the one changing the legislation in that circumstance? Would it not be the Blaine County mayor?
Yes.
So the Blaine County mayor would be making the decision, correct?
To shift authority granted to their office under the Constitution to somebody else, which would inherently conflict with the Constitution. At that point. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be able to happen. I'm just asking, what does that process look like if we do want to, they do put forward a legislation that is a amendment to the way that things are supposed to be done under the Constitution.
Unless it's impeached, there won't be an issue. Still, technically, anything can be argued to be
How are these? Where is
but
this
I could
English
still see if it's
interpretation
done
coming
in good
from?
faith and not really bending the words. I still
This
see
is
this
is a comprehension issue.
Is making that authority.
He's saying if Blaine County mayor is like they control us now,
but
there's nothing wrong.
So
This seems like a hypothetical to me that would not occur because there's a big difference between saying that I, as mayor of Blaine County, will submit Blaine County to the authority of the Los Santos County mayor.
Yes.
And what would be more likely the case would be that if there were to be some such change, I would ask that there be some sort of representation that, the system would change so that Los Santos, or rather,
This is why I'm
San
not
Andreas
knee
mayor
deeping
would
in
be
because I'm
somewhat
allowing
molded to
these takes to come out.
Large swaths of land in
either way,
city.
listen.
Yeah.
There is lots of things you can write and whatever, and if you want to bring it to the state, you can. It's that simple. Just if there's the majority of you people that want to bring something forward, feel free to do it. There's nothing that is going to stop us from having input on something like this. So if there is questions, instead of waiting for a response, just throw out an email and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible.
Can I, as a very basic sense, can I ask if we were to legislate the method for amending the Constitution, and we had the mayor of Los Santos County, the mayor of Blaine County, and the SAMA director and the justices, or a majority of the justices, all sign on to that legislation to amend the Constitution, would that be enough to say that that passes into law as the method for amending the Constitution?
So I'll start it with
yes, that would be fine.
Yeah.
We would make it majority and not unanimous. In saying that, even if it's close, I don't mind it coming through on the table as long as the votes and who has signed it is written on the paper itself. Things can be discussed and gone over either way. So feel free to pass anything through that has a few votes in favor of being reviewed.
Okay.
Could we go back to perhaps the original discussion?
Yes, thank you.
More focused on the. Well, you know what, Mr. Mayor? Do you have anything to say? You were meant to start, but it seems we got sidetracked to Japan.
Yeah.
We'd like to come back here to America if possible.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm gonna kind of bullet point some of these things, and please weigh in, justices or anyone else. There was a note mentioned earlier about the signatures that currently exist on legislation being an affirmation that said justices have signed it. We came to learn as recent as the VAF legislation that was posted up that that is not necessarily the case. McNee, you can speak to this, but as per our conversation, your name showed up as a signatory of the VAF changes, but it turns out that you never actually signed it or acknowledged it. You simply provided a opinion. The concern over that is if that is true with the VAF legislation, it brings into question all recent legislation that does have the 5 justice names on it.
We also have one that was signed by a justice that wasn't a justice anymore at the time.
Yes. So
that would be the DOC legislation.
Perhaps we should pass some legislation, the Biden legislation, that any person that is written on this must be informed and fully in agreement that they have signed it themselves.
Yes, I love
believe
that.
the one that had the justice that wasn't adjusting, where there was a typo that got corrected. The one, McNee, did you not vote on the VAF legislation? Because your signatures only get put there. If
I think either way, the relevance of what's happened there is still an indicator of what could be a problem. We just need to make sure that it is stated that those signatures are, in fact, always that meaning of yes, you are voting to pass this legislation.
Absolutely.
Would it be an undue burden to then ask that each legislative authority signing onto it or each justice signing onto it separately co-sign the legislation on the city hall?
Yes.
As a separate, reply.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that is fine to do.
We already do that internally anyway, so I don't think having one more place to do it is too much of a burden from our side.
Again,
that
this
is
is probably
perfect.
something I believe makes sense and could be passed in legislation rather quickly. So, again, if you can draft something up, either governance and just get a quick check on everybody agrees, so that we can have that passed faster, if that's okay.
Beautiful. The second thing that we noticed is that there was legislation changed about 3 months ago. This was in the time of what we call the shadow edits. And this only recently came to our attention, is that the account that was, what do you call it, closed down, quote unquote, that was used by the old mayor, is now being utilized to transfer funds to police departments, to BCSO, maybe to Los Santos County. And the question comes up, like, what is the point of a budget if what was told to me was the offshore account is sort of free money popping out. This is specifically...
Wait, what?
Are you referring to account 1?
Yes, that is correct.
And then you're just wrong.
That hasn't happened at all. Also, I don't. You said let's get back on topic of the original thing here. This is not on topic of the original thing here in any way, shape, or form.
I thought he asked me to make points.
Oh, that's fine. If there's any indicator of things like that, you can just forward them forward with evidence and whatnot, and we can have them discussed at a later point. I feel like that will probably be a long conversation, but in saying that, I would very much like
I
to
have the
hear
proof.
your input on that. So documenting it would be great.
I'm sure Barrett would love to investigate that too.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I love financial stuff.
Yep.
That is his forte.
Yep. It's actually Barrett that brought it up to my attention. I did verify it. The next.
I'm sorry. Can I jump in real quick? If
Yeah.
we're kind of finalized with the impeachment discussions and everything, is it okay if I, shoot off? It's kind of at my time limit.
Sure.
Have
Yes.
we
Yes.
finalized? It kind of
We're
sounded
gonna
like we
try
went on, like, 10
to.
different tangents.
Yeah. So impeachment itself is not really. I'm going to look in over things myself and have a little more of a, I guess, discussion behind closed doors with other people and go over a lot of documentation based on what's happening there. The solution to that was essentially trying to streamline things, which was to be discussed shortly. But you're free to go if you want. Well, we're not going to hold you around, so I do plan this to hasten up though, if possible. So
good night, McNeil.
Yep.
Have a good night.
So the reason I brought up the particular banking reference is not to say, hey, why are people doing this and that's bad or whatever, but rather the underlining notion of we've got budgets, right? We've got the Los Santos County account, we got the Blaine account, we got the 2 police departments, and the question of like misappropriation of funds and comes into question. Not necessarily, hey, I'm going to give you $10 million to do X and Y thing. But the question becomes, where does the line of misappropriation begin and when does it end? To use an example, let's say, for example, Princess over here, she's like, oh my God, we're at $10 million and we need this $20 million thing. If money is being transferred from a multi-million-dollar account, not governed by the people, and sent to her, is that misappropriation? Where do those lines begin and where does it end? And the reason why I think it's very important is we got a lot of money in the state, right? And it becomes a question of whether or not budgets will even exist if we start entering into that practice. Am I making
I'd
sense?
have to see. Yes, I know what you're saying. I'm just unsure of the bank accounts themselves. So if
the
you
state
could,
has a less than a fourth of what you do, by the way.
That
if
is
you
true.
could,
We have a lot of
send
money.
over
We
the
don't use it.
data and whatnot.
Yes.
I could have a look into it more because
Yeah.
there's probably also things that happen with other state officials that I'm not entirely
Yeah.
sure on. So if you could document it, like I said, and
Yeah.
I'd be happy to look into it myself. So
beautiful.
I'd also, I would also add that it's not a hypothetical. I was offered by a judge that I could ask for reimbursement for properties that I have bought on behalf of Blaine County, and the state offshore account would cover them.
Yeah.
What judge told you that?
That would be Arcadia.
Yeah.
I don't know what she's referring to exactly there. Obviously,
Yeah.
if there is something that you want state funding for, that is something that we can review and determine. But that I don't know what she's talking about, an offshore account or whatever. There is the DOJ account. We do have our own funds that we do.
No,
allocate
I'm
them
referring
toward,
specifically to. She didn't say offshore account. That's just what Nino said. So we're referring to the account.
I don't know.
That's not the one that I can see, but the separate one.
No,
Murray's
the
told me
DOJ has
about
our own
it
account and our own money, and the fines feed into that account, so that it has a decent amount of money, but not anywhere near like what Los Santos County does. And like I said, if there's things that you need help knowing that Blaine County operates at a 1/40th fraction,
do they
of
recognize
what Los
that
Santos County
just because
does,
we have a big
that's
number,
something
we
that
don't
as justices would
misappropriate?
maintain to make sure that the county doesn't falter, because ultimately that
Yeah,
kind of our
100%.
responsibility to make sure that the state stays together. But if you have something like that, put it forward to us. We'll see what we can get done for you, type deal. But there is
Either way-
some like blank check of some state account with hundreds of millions of dollars in it that is available.
I think those questions, feel free to forward them through. I don't know all the details myself,
Yeah.
and I don't care to discuss them so much without all the information. So just
Mhm.
pass on things, and I'll try to look over them. Before we do bore the marshals to death, how many were opposed? Again, who was opposed to the marshals being separated into its
I
own
love
entity,
this
in
so
which,
much.
the voting system is more based on the people than
Chat,
the
this is
justices.
going
Anybody
really well, to be
entirely
honest.
opposed to that, out of curiosity?
it is good.
I think
that
just as each mayor's office has their own law
the
enforcement arm, and
defensiveness,
the way that the marshals have acted as the Department of Justice.
it's so obvious what's happening, and I know the governor knows it.
A legal and law enforcement authority that is not subject.
Because I'm gonna send him the document afterwards.
Whims and the ins and outs of every election cycle. I think it is important that there is stability there, and that ultimately there's one law enforcement agency that answers to the rule of law. Given that the majority of the population and voter base in all elections is ultimately individuals with significant criminal records.
Sure.
I agree with Weiss on that one.
I agree as well.
In saying that, yes, obviously there would be logic put forward behind things like this. To say that even if there was a majority vote from all of Los Santos, it would still be able to have a system in which things were weighted, where a criminal's vote would be 0 compared to the chief of police, which would be 1,000 type thing. So when I
But the
say
chief of police
that
is installed by the mayor, right? So that's the whole point. Is this is one agency, one law enforcement arm that is completely removed from politics. It is entirely separate. No political influence is being input onto this division. It is
sure
one agency.
why are you
that stays
speaking
outside
over
of
me, to be honest.
That's not my intent. Go for it.
Again, I asked who would be opposed to something like that happening. Is anybody directly opposed to it?
Yes, I am.
I'd be pretty.
Okay.
I mean, constitutionally, I don't really understand how that would work.
Well, thankfully, the state are able to change the constitution based on what the people wish to have. So, from you that are voting against it, do you believe the best outcome for the role of director is to be voted by justices?
Yes.
Yes.
And, okay, sure. I'll note that down here in my book. Is there any other discussions regarding like the marshals and the justices in general, the process?
I don't think so. I think we all talked about it pretty extensively in coming to the legislation that we did and the outcome that we did. I think there was a discussion of whether it should be unanimous versus majority, but the concept that
Okay, well, let's let everybody answer that instead of you answering it for them. Does anybody have anything to bring up? Yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was already starting to hit on it. As my biggest concern is the unanimous requirement, requiring 100% of approval, because it, especially in a system of justice and the justice system alone, you by requiring unanimous approval, you don't allow for dissent, and I think dissent is important to have that documentation of the opposing view. And if we don't allow the opposing view, then we don't have anything to reflect on and learn from our past and understand the experiences from the different individuals.
I agree.
I agree with that as well.
Right. Okay. Well, there's some thought process that I want to go over some things privately, either way, on that situation in itself, and discuss it with some other people. Again, like I said, I'm not here to make some rash decisions or anything like that. Either way, it's more so to find the kinks in the road and see if we can bend them out and make something else happen. And when it comes to this impeachment process and issue you have had with the justices, it's not so much that they're inactive. It's more so the issue is that they could get to a point where it prevents things from happening, like you said, with unanimous choice. Out of curiosity, though, with the justices, do you plan to have more justices brought forward, or what is the process you're currently working with on in that situation?
That is a discussion that we've had recently. Hoping to add to our ranks. It's just a determination of if there's anyone up to the task. We
would like to have a fifth.
Yes.
So could we perhaps go over the wording of unanimous and make more formal majority votes? I think if anything is unanimous
Thank
decisions,
you.
in my opinion, that should be much more of a public viewing if you're to control everything, behind closed doors rather than for the people in a democracy. If it's maybe worded a little differently to be majority, that might help alleviate some of the stress, and we can see how that goes, unless you're against that as well.
I don't have any issue with that. I think even amongst the justices, and feel free, again, I don't mean to speak for everybody. I'm just been the one doing the speaking. The unanimous requirement has actually worked out in our favor and brought issues to our attention that we otherwise might have pushed through with a majority, not hearing the last one's opinion. I think when it comes to adding to the ranks of justices and the marshal director, that there hasn't been a situation where requiring a unanimous vote has caused an issue for us, or been unreasonably burdensome. But if it is, if external parties feel it is a concern, it's something we could potentially look at making a majority instead. Though I don't know that would severely change the way that we're actually doing things.
I would agree to that so far. I was actually someone who initially had concerns with the concept of unanimous votes, just due to the fact that that feels like a very high burden. If there's one person that just happens to dislike Barrett, for example, then he'd be fucked. And I don't particularly like that. However, we're very careful with the people that we promote into this role. And I know that every single person on this team, and that anyone we would consider, would not take their votes that lightly. And so by making it unanimous, we have allowed for very thorough discussions, especially for those who maybe aren't around on the day-to-day quite as much, to make sure that they are warned of why, their opinion may be, maybe not as informed. It's helped a lot with our communication. I could really go either way on it, to be honest.
Saying that, I mean, I believe maybe you shouldn't vote on things until you've had an informed discussion with everybody that's involved in the voting process. So perhaps that would alleviate that in the first place. No.
I don't disagree, but when we talk about these things, we don't immediately put it to a vote usually. These are
of course.
as discussions.
Okay.
If we discuss it and someone is immediately like, oh, I think this is perfect, we should go for this person, then the discussion continues and we might, learn more along the way.
Just out of curiosity, is the warden still interim?
Yes.
We actually, yes, the warden is still interim. However, we did just have a vote on that literally before this meeting took place, and I can update you on that unless the governor wants to hear it.
I don't really mind about that. You can do that later.
Okay.
Well, there's a few things I need to go over either way. Saying that I had a few things thrown on the table that if you were to change the penal code as justices right now, do you pass any form of legislation to back the changes, or any sort of like public notice to the legislation changes?
If there was a one-off change to the penal code at the moment, that would be dependent upon how it comes. So you see one that just went into effect, which is the aiding and abetting charge, which was the outcome of a judicial proceeding, which was then posted as part of case law in the City Hall section of the government website. In the event that it was a one-off change of the penal code that was unrelated to that, it would get posted on the City Hall section of the website as well, plus a DOJ announcement in the email.
Okay,
kind of letting everyone know that that charge had been modified accordingly.
Sure. Well, I just want to be sure that if something isn't pasted on case law and the case law isn't posted, any change to the penal code would still be considered a legislative change and has to be made public like any other legislative change. Nothing should be changed without notice to the people in any legislative process. While it can be automated because you have legislative authority, it needs to be done through
They're
case law
lying
to
openly,
automated, or otherwise it needs to be done in the normal process just to make sure that's happening.
May I ask, how did all the penal code things happen in report number 18480 then?
So there was a mass penal code update that did take place, and then there was a announcement that went out about the entirety. That doing those one by one, given how many changes were made, would have been extremely burdensome. I don't want to say burdensome, but like it wouldn't have made any sense. It would have just flooded it in a way that didn't make sense. So it was all done as one big thing.
But am I correct to say? Am I correct to say that all these a lot of these charges sitting at the top with the header "new charges" did not have any legislative backing?
What do you mean by that? So there wasn't a case that came out. So for example, we can wake up tomorrow and a new crime could be being committed, right? And it's not technically illegal because the crime hasn't been defined yet, and there couldn't be a case about it unless it were to be made illegal.
Right.
Which is why the justices have the ability to modify the penal code at will and add a new charge.
They
But
don't
there should
have
be a
the
notification.
authority to change that at will at all. You have the legal authority over judicial matters and legal matters, and they are when something arises in which law is discussed, generally in a courtroom.
Can I just ask, is the DOJ a legislative authority? Are they a legislative body?
Yes, the legislative authority of the judicial and legal matters within the city, and that is generally when law is to be discussed. In saying that, I'm curious.
They're actively lying to the governor. It's actually
this would occur
insane.
in which, there would be a law that's broken that wouldn't need it. I don't know what you mean by. Can you give me an example of what you mean by having something passed, or why you would need something passed without the law going through the correct process, being discussed, so to speak?
If you want to take a look at this, Governor, it's report number 18480. It maintains a change log of the penal code.
You said it's a report.
I
It's shared
believe
with
so.
everyone publicly, so if you look at shared reports, it should be there.
Oh, sure. 1 second.
Murray, where's the modify penal code line at?
Judicial powers, I think.
Well, what document did you say that was, Mr. Caps Lock?
18480. I still don't know what the caps lock document is, Zaddy. I think it's like Michael's document. Or if you click the shared reports at the bottom, at the bottom of the MDT, you might be able to see it.
Oh, yes, I see it. That's a lot easier.
And the reference I brought up, if you go down, it says new charges.
Yeah, so for example, like the police brought to us that there was a criminal transaction of a firearm class 1 charge, but not a criminal transaction of a firearm class 2 or class 3 charge, right? So we, as the Department of Justice, instituted the charges of criminal transaction of a firearm class 2, criminal transaction of a firearm class 3. But that is within the purview of the Department of Justice to institute those penal code changes, because if it were to go through the normal legislative process, and let's say, obviously every criminal would contest everything being illegal, and it would go to a public vote where all the criminals would vote, no, don't make that illegal, and then crime would be legal. Right? At some point,
that is not how it works at all.
Right. That's what the Department of Justice made a determination that the criminal transaction of firearm class 2 was illegal, and then implemented the charge accordingly. Now, there should be notification to say.
So just to step back a few moments, if people were to contest something, it would come back towards the state more than likely. So if something was to be passed, right, but for a public vote, that would be the people, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes. So they would. That's where they would contest it. And if they were to vote no on something, it would still need to go to the state to be authorized, obviously. And we're not going to pass a law that says firearms are legal because Bobby McGee wants to shoot people. So the people's vote, while it is there, isn't going to be the last say in something always, because criminals will not be regarded in certain aspects of law. Just like
I'm going to ask him for a job after this.
Vote. Well, that's why you're a legislative authority in certain areas, so to speak. Certain people and certain groups will have more weighing on certain things. In saying that, anything should be passed unless it's based on a case law, like the Constitution says, and it should be made public. It should be described why it's happening. And it should be put through the process in which the mayors can object to it at that process.
Go
ahead.
The mayors aren't the only one that can object to it. According to the legislative process, any member of the public can contest it. So if we were to put it forward that way and not just make it law and say we have to put it forward as a proposed legislation, then any criminal, anybody can go and contest that legislation. And if they don't like the outcome of arbitration, they can push it to a public vote. And as soon as that public vote is made, that public vote is final.
No,
there is no what's that? That
would mean it is disputed. Correct. Doesn't mean that it's yes or no that it's being confirmed. We, as the state, will go over things like this, similar to the impeachment or an audit review or something, if there is something contested in this situation.
That is
We
not
would-
what's written so far. Right now, the public vote is the final say. If the public vote is no, then there is no. The state, reviews this at this point. It's just the public vote is no. Period. It doesn't pass.
Sure, but remember the constitutional thing you discussed. People have a right to security, safety, and other things, and if it is to conflict with the Constitution, which this clearly would, it would be passed to the state.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is slightly news to us. I don't think that was ever written in
That's
there. Is
yeah.
this
That's
something
not.
that
Yeah. This is a completely new concept.
Well, I'm not sure what is written where, but I mean, like I said, the Constitution says that you have judicial matters as authority, and that's where it should pass through. And this would not be a judicial matter, in my opinion, until it has gone through some sort of process or formally posted on the website, the government website, like every other legislative change.
Yes.
You understand an issue like this is you say this sort of would need to be pushed through for X, Y reason, but it's just what if the people vote against it, right? What if you become a dictator and pass a law that says, fuck you, you're all in jail for the rest of your life?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd get impeached.
Well, you
And
wouldn't,
I'd have
because
to
they'd
talk
be in
all
jail
the-
for
I'd
the
have to
rest of
talk
their
the
life.
other justices into it, right? You'd have to have the entire justice pool turn into a coup, which is
Right.
the reason why there's not just one of us. There's 4 or 5 of us, ideally.
May I, Weiss, the underlining point that's made there with the dictator thing is we already have cases where these things came into play without any. I didn't see this. Mumbles didn't see it, or was it Pred? I don't remember. And Mumbles. All these charges came into play. There was no. We were not aware they were coming in. We didn't know the details of it. These things just overnight became illegal. Now, that's not to say that Class 3 firearms shouldn't be illegal, but there was legal things that became illegal, and it staunched any public discourse over it or public say. And that's kind of the underlining nature of
Well, that was
of
it was
this.
done in the mass.
When
right?
you
And
look at
then
all
they
these
got
new
overturned.
charges, which of these couldn't be referenced to a law or case that has already happened? I believe like almost everything could have been. I don't understand why it would need to be passed like this. For instance, battery of a police officer. I'm sure our police officers had their head caved in once or twice, so something could be referenced in which why this is determined. All this could, in my opinion, have been done the same way through a case law. I don't understand why it would be done like this.
Yeah.
Well, a case would have to be brought, and we don't choose which cases get brought to court, right? So, like, let's
Okay,
take something
so
different, like criminal possession of a classified document. When somebody got found with a classified FIB document that was not inherently illegal, we obviously, given the sensitive nature of that document and what you told us about how dangerous that could be, determined that possessing those classified documents was illegal. But that's not a case that was brought before us that we could have done that as a result of a case. We just had to do it. You know what I mean? Like there's no, if nobody appeals a case, there's no charge to charge anybody with. How would that ever see a courtroom?
Somebody
we just
had
have the mayors
a
do it?
what, an FIB document? You said.
Yes, a classified FIB document.
So how did anybody come across this FIB document exactly?
Was believed to be, well, not believe, it was caught as a contraband item after a bank robbery. I forget what exactly.
So it was involved in a crime.
Correct, but that crime didn't go to a courtroom, right? The individual got charged in the cell. They pled guilty. They go off to jail. The DOJ never gets involved. Never sees a courtroom. There's no case to derive a case law out of.
So how exactly did it get put on your table? I'm curious.
The police brought it forward to us and said, "Hey, we found classified illegal. The classified
So it is
FIB
based on a
documents, it
judicial
should be
matter to an
illegal."
extent. Yes.
You should be able
Which
to
is why
write
we made the
legislation
law.
behind it. You should be able to write legislation behind it, like I did with the Penal Code, unauthorized transaction of medical equipment.
I think if you
I
were to
rewrote
reference
Oops.
that law, just because it's still a judicial matter, the entire judicial process starts once somebody's in custody from my understanding. So that would still be a part of the judicial process, since you oversee all of that. So I don't see why you still couldn't reference that if you were to say, hey, we found this document inside XYZ, and this is why we're classing it as a legal document, and reference the Constitution, which, security, safety. Obviously, we wouldn't want FIB documents out there. I think you could make a pretty easy document that says, hey, this is based on case law or a judicial matter. No.
Yeah.
The outcome of a judicial, it's because it says the outcome of a judicial matter. So if we say that, anything that involves that is a judicial matter, and we can just, essentially do these things, but notify and give a reasoning for it, that's fine. My concern would be to the point of Perry just said, of put it forward like a legislation. The SAMA doesn't have the public contest period, which
if there is no, yes, if there is no, if there is no founding judicial matter or legal matter, then yes, it would have to go through that way. But I'm pretty sure you can articulate something that was involved in a crime that it was based on a legal matter without issue.
Yeah,
so I don't think there's really any logic to say no to doing it the proper way, in which you would still be a legislative authority, but at least it would be documented and passed through legislation properly, which could also be opposed like the other systems.
May I point out that in 9 months, there has not, I can't think of a single thing that has been contested that has that grand of an effect, to the extent that we had tax law passed in the state. So there is a possibility, if they said nuclear bombs are illegal and we needed, we find out there's a nuclear bomb being manufactured somewhere, that if someone put that legislation together, hypothetically, someone could contest it. But that hasn't happened in 9 months.
I'm saying that if you were to pass that to the state for a review, it would also be looked at immediately. So I understand.
The review process was not, we weren't aware of any of that, but that was even an option.
It's been the same since the last conversations we had, that if there was a signature from a good account of authorities, that we would look over something like it was a review or impeachment. It was discussed last time around. If you need it in writing, it might actually be good to have something written.
Agreed.
There, as it might get lost in time either way. So we can have that iterated on inside the Constitution if need be.
I also think it would be wrong to assume that any making things illegal is going to immediately be contested just because of the amount of crime that happens. I think most people are, there's a significant civilian population, but also generally people are aware of the necessity of laws, and I don't think are going to just say, what if we just have
of course
anarchy?
In saying that, I do understand the thought that it could happen like that, but like I said, if there is something that is contested, it should still go through state review if it's based on authority that is within the constitutional system, the rights and freedoms, so to speak. In ways you do the other conduct reviews and whatnot, you have to see if it's constitutional, correct? So if you feel something is the opposite and it's against the Constitution in which the people are voting, it would still go through the same process in which the state would look at it. And like I said earlier, we are not going to take a bunch of criminals' vote on healthcare over. Necessarily over the medical authorities' vote, so to speak, if something was to get contested or whatever. So there will still be logic behind things, but again, I think we can document a few things coming out of this, and we'll make the process a little more understood for all sides to go these routes.
Absolutely.
That would be helpful, yeah. And just so I'm clear, because I've heard two different things here. So if we were to put something forward based on it, so using the criminal possession of a classified document, right? Somebody was found in possession of it in a criminal case. The police brought it forward to us. Are we proceeding kind of the way SAMA does now, where we put forward the legislation, determine it to be constitutional, and it gets enacted accordingly? Or are we opening it up to public contest like the mayor's offices?
If you can articulate that that FIB document is yeah, what you deem it to be, then sure. I just don't think the FIB exists anymore, so it's probably a lost document from a long time ago. It's merely a piece of paper with shit written on it.
No, I think it does exist, so in that capacity.
Yeah, well, we can maybe have the marshals talk to you about that privately, Governor, because I don't want to, get too much information out about that. That is probably a good thing. Barrett and Darker, you can chat with them about that, because I know that's been.
Do you find it strange they talk about the Secret Service if it's a secret?
That does make sense.
That's why I don't reveal mine.
So just we're all on the same page. The penal code changes will push forward on an ongoing basis, kind of the same way SAMA does, where they put forward the legislative proposal. It doesn't go through the public contest if there's a constitutional justification for the charge.
I would say the easiest way to do it would do the same process, just articulate it, reference any sort of law or case if possible, and go through it with that route. But if there's a question to your doubts entirely on it, I would say put it through the normal legislative process, not as the authority if there is no legal binding that has occurred before.
You have an example of
so,
that?
What did you say about jumping boots or something?
Yes. What was it? It was like, I think it was like criminal possession of contraband. Yeah. So jump boots were deemed to be illegal as contraband.
So I'm not saying that they shouldn't be illegal, by the way, but being able to reference why, how, and having that in legislation would be very handy, because obviously I have no idea. And if I was to go through a proceeding and that's all that was written there, I would throw it in the garbage can. So I think it's things like this that aren't necessarily incorrect, so to speak, based on why it's happened, but we need to know why it's happened is all, in case it does go through something like that.
So I gotta,
and one-off changes would come with that explanation. Now, like I said, the mass penal code update, given the extent of all the changes, it got all kind of put into this condensed format so that people could review it easily.
That's fine.
So I can give you context for that if you'd like. Otherwise, if
I am not opposed to you mass doing penal code changes at all, as long as there is reference to why it's changed, if it's in one of the questionable areas, of course. But either way, I think law and for a lot of these, you can look at them and say, I could imagine 20,000 legal proceedings that have happened, or legal situations that they could be referenced to, but like I said, the police battery or whatever, it's very simple to show something reference to that. And honestly, it's logical that something like that should be passed. So you could even reference the Constitution in that circumstance, I believe.
Now that's for making a new charge or something illegal that isn't illegal now. What about simply something like updating the times and fines related to a charge? Is that within our authority and purview to determine the sentencing
if you
for these
pass that as legislation, it should be within your authority. There's nothing stopping you from tomorrow writing up a piece of legislation that says we can change times and fines based on X, Y, Z. But if you're to change a time and fine, unless it's authorized by the state, I don't believe it should be done, as it is technically still a piece of legislation.
That's
in saying that, you can still reference crimes that have happened. For instance, if there is millions of bank robberies and you have the logic of, hey, we're going to increase the times for this because there's too many bank robberies, you can reference the cases and put that forward and say, this is why these are changing.
All right.
I mean, I do want to just bring you to report number 18197. This is the judicial positions, powers, and election process. This was passed through the normal legislative process, open to public contest. Is that we did exactly what you just said. Basically, we wrote a piece of legislation that says what we are allowed to do. It went through the public contest period. It passed. Right in here.
Which one is this again? Is this a report or legislation? Or what am I looking at?
It is report number 18197. It is legislation, but that's the easiest way to find it. It is titled Judicial Positions, Powers, and Election Process.
Oh, yes, I see it.
And then under Justice Authority, which is the third to last section there, it does specifically state modification of the penal code.
So,
and this includes adding and removing charges, modifying wording, fines, times, and authority.
So
the exact authority of what we've been doing with the penal code to us, that this has been passed through the normal legislative process. And it's not just authority we're pulling out of our ass.
That
we did write it up as legislation.
So there's an asterisk next to that. as the commentary around that particular line still exists, the conversation around that is that the DOJ would be the mechanism to do it, as you have MDT access, et cetera, et cetera. We had long discussions about this and commentary around it. That did not infer or imply that the DOJ could just do it without any legislative backing.
For the county laws, it does say that they may modify this at will, and then it says they may only add, remove, or modify county laws in the penal code to comply with any county legislation. But it does completely separately from that state. They may modify this at will. We can modify the penal code at will based on current legislation. That is.
I hate to interrupt. Anybody got any food? I'm about to drop. Right
I do not.
Oh, yeah.
That is the authority that is the basis of the authority that we have done that so far. It's not like we just pulled out of our ass and said we can do this. We did.
But here's what's missing here. Here's what's missing here. What I'm claiming that is, because we were part of that conversation, right? Like the other mayors and whatnot, we reviewed this, is that this particular line, when we put it in, and to keep it simple so this wasn't long running, is that this line was intended and meant to mean you are the mechanism. In other words, you physically open up the MDT, you insert in, the wording, you change the numbers, et cetera, et cetera. You are the authority to do it. But it didn't infer that it would be without legislative backing. And the reason I highlight that specifically is, that's...
Which part of this are we referencing right now? Exactly.
Under justice authority.
Yes.
Oh, yes, my bad.
Bullet
Go ahead,
point
sorry.
modification of the penal code.
Yeah. So if I am to believe that the intent of this the entire time was that at will the penal code could be modified without any discussion, without legislation, et cetera, that is not only news to us, it's counter to all the comments and discussions on the document, but also the meetings surrounding this.
I mean, during that meeting where this was discussed, I do specifically remember the point was brought up of we wake up one day and there is a new crime that is being committed that is not covered
an
by the penal
emergency.
code, and that the justices had the authority to at will create a charge to cover such crime. And
As
that
a
was why
mechanism.
the language.
Was this so? This legislation was signed by, passed by everybody, the
It was
mayors as
signed-
well.
That
it was
is
signed by the
correct.
justices. It was reviewed by the mayors before it was posted for public contest, and it did pass the public contest phase.
So
indeed, was written just like this.
Word
that
for
is
word.
correct.
It's on the government, the city hall section of the government website. I can point you to that if you need.
Sure.
So
no, that's fine. If it's written like this and it's passed the process, then it's fine. But that doesn't mean it's not open to impeachment or review based on it countering the constitutional writings. Because again, the Constitution is the law, but some of the verbiage of this could be seen as going against what the Constitution specifically says. But in saying that, that can also be changed in the Constitution. So depending on the outcome of that, it could go both ways. But I
I'm
could
trying
see
to-
it being argued either way. In saying that, I think there is room for you to change the penal code, but you have to understand that legislation can't go against.
I don't know why they want so much control over the state. It's actually crazy to me.
Could be people's rights. Then that could also
So
be.
he's admitting they attempted to swindle the people. How is that what the fuck?
I think again, there's quite a bit to read over. So what I think would be best is, if possible, could we have either side that has questions on these things forward through the IDs so we can have them looked at a little more thoroughly and see the grievances, issues, and see if there's anything that needs to be done about it. In saying that, I believe still the Constitution is above this, and it does say that you shall pass anything that isn't of a legal matter the way that everybody else does. Your authority hasn't been changed if I was to go over the Constitution and look at it. So it should be done that way. When it comes to the penal code, though, that is probably something we should go over a little further either way.
Yeah. If given the concerns of the people over the fine and time changes, specifically, some of which have gone up 10x,
yes,
what would be the reversion process? Would we contest all of this?
You
what
can
would be
contest anything you wish. You could do it all at once,
Yes.
one at a time, whenever you deem necessary. If you think
Also
it's
just
against the
talk to us.
Constitution, that's why we have created this entire system. If Constitution is breached and clearly breached, and we want to discuss, it can be discussed. It doesn't matter what it is, how it is, if it's a penal code, if it's everything written in here is legislation, if it's based on law. So we can discuss anything.
Yeah, I mean specifically like to get some guidance on this penal code change log, and I think the nature of this is like all these charges were modified with fine and time, with mostly input from law enforcement, from my understanding. However, if we find that these the monetary fines associated with this are just not it, they're a detriment to society. You're saying we would pass legislation to get it reverted, or would we?
You could
Just come talk to us. Literally just come
you
talk
could-
to us. Which
Well,
ones
I
are there?
want to
and
hear
then
from the
we'll-
governor because we,
You can pass anything through the state as a review as well. Any legislation can be reviewed. It doesn't need to be.
I'm going to kill
it
this
doesn't need
guy
to go through the
afterwards.
legislative process to counter a legislation. If there is something that you believe is against the Constitution and you have the signatures to do so, you can pass it through the state.
Perfect. And I'm not trying to shut
there
you
is
down there,
still-
Weiss. The reason I'm aiming for how do we write through the process is because, in my opinion, that line that was added to the judicial document, while it is there, that while we agreed it was there for emergency circumstances, that was abused. So, it's. And,
I mean, also just there wasn't just law enforcement there. There were clerks, there were members of the public. It was based on the audit document originally that was provided by a member of your cabinet. Like that was what started
Are we
the
saying
whole discussion
legislation
about the
was
penal code.
changed, or what are we
No,
saying
that's
right
not
now?
true.
The penal code. Yeah, but all of it was based on the penal code audit that was
Archibald's
provided by
document is completely different from this.
Okay, listen. How about this? Like I said, just
This
send through
guy
the
is actually
documents. We'll go
retarded.
over it.
I don't know.
There's a few things we need
is
to
he
touch on.
acting in bad faith, or is there?
I
is
wanna
this
go over
guy
things more
cooked?
thoroughly.
Like,
So if you have
this
issue
guy
with
is not
anything,
it.
write it up, send it over to me, and I'll have it looked at
Yeah.
through the week and see what comes from it. If you want to fully review something and possibly have it thrown out or reverted or changed based on constitutional things, that too can be done under the same way that you would impeach somebody. You can impeach the document in a way, if that makes sense, review the document, so to speak.
What? Is this guy getting paid
and
to
I don't
do
mind if
this?
they're
I'm
pulled
so
together.
confused.
So if there's multiple,
I don't know how you
things
could
in the same
lie
area,
so
for instance,
fucking
penal code, you can
blatantly.
pull them together to save the hassle of going through a million things at once.
Yeah.
Again, I just want to iterate: the Constitution is what we will fall back onto unless it is amended by everybody and they want it amended. So if there was a conflict within these, even though it is said like that and the people end up going against it, the Constitution would come out on top. So we just need to be sure that we follow this as much as possible as well. And again, with the amendments, I too am fine with you passing through changes to the Constitution if there is an agreement on mayors, the medical authority, and DOJ. If there's enough signatures, just send them
I
over
think he's
and
drunk.
look at,
There's
having it
no way.
implemented.
I am so shocked. There was a piece of legislation that we actually tried pushing as a consequence of this. It's been waiting the state's review, I think, for about 2 months now. I'm not sure if y'all were contacted in regards to it. I was told that is the case.
I am not sure. If you want to pass me through whatever it is, I can have it looked at tonight.
It should be at the bottom of the city hall. I think it's the right to own or something.
Was there an email sent to me or something on this document?
The justices were handling it. Well, the
Arcadia
right
specifically
to-
was handling it. I will let you know, Governor, how she was going about doing that.
Okay. Well, I don't believe I have had anything sent over to me, so.
Yeah, it's the Right to Property Act. It's going to be on City Hall. We were not provided a reason. It simply just sat there, and so
Okay. Well, sure. It's in the on the government form. Did you say, or is it
Yep. The government
documented
form.
here?
Yep.
Okay.
On City Hall.
All right. I'll take a look at that as well. If it's apparently meant for review.
Yeah.
Okay. Listen. I don't want to hold people up. This has been far too long. I do want to say that I'll look over the systemic way that we do the process with Marshals and DOJ, and I'll review what we've been discussing here as well. And then,
Oh my God.
like I said, if you have documents or questions, feel free to push them through, and I will try to respond to them as soon as possible.
Okay. Beautiful.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay. Perfect. Well, I do appreciate the time today. I guess I'll get back to you.
I'm
shortly on
shell
these things.
shocked how much
That was wonderful. Thank you for your time, sir.
No problem.
this guy is willing to straight lie to the governor for his semblance of power. It is actually insane.
I guess before state review, you know, if there's specific things within the penal code that you feel are overkill or need changing or whatever, let's just talk it through and figure out if we can get it fixed, because it seems pretty simple unless it's something crazy.
Yes, there's a lot that we got to talk about.
Thank you, Governor.
So I'm just going to ask you kind of flatly, was it your impression? What was your impression of that line in the penal code? I know we've discussed it a lot of times, but what is your current position of the reading of it?
With regard to what the ability, I mean, we just talked that through. Is the intent was that, you know, essentially when it comes to state law and you know,
I'm
new
going
crime
to
popping
blow
something
up
becoming
this
illegal,
building
you know,
after
new
you
items
leave.
being contraband from particular robberies, etc., that be able to be updated accordingly. Also, things like the times and
this
fines.
is a
Like
joke.
you know, Crane way back in the day took what the penal code was and took it to like 1/10 of what it was previously across the board, and then those things never got looked at again for over 2 years. And then we had things like stalking was $110, right, or some nonsense like absolute meaningless value. So we went back across the penal code and rather just completely and say everything's going up by 10x, looked at the charges that actually get charged, what's appropriate, bringing into the balance of what actually makes sense. And, you know, does it make sense that it's worse to rob somebody than it is to commit an act of torture by ways of time and fine, and you know, strike those balances internally within the penal code accordingly, which is what that whole mass update was. And like I said, that wasn't just law enforcement. Like that there were 40 plus people involved in giving input advice into that. I don't know how your members of your office weren't part of that. I'm pretty sure they were.
No. So Archibald put together a document, just to be clear here, so there's no confusion, because I don't know if you know this personally or you were told this. Archibald's document simply outlined everything that did not have legislative backing, the intent of which we would then create legislative backing for it, because, number one, penal code charges in and of themselves are not descriptive enough. That's what the beginning and end of it. As for this document, we were not given the copy until the day it was released. And even the document that we were given did not have the new charges on it. But that's sort of beside the point, right? Is going back to the statement the government made in regards to the penal code being a part of legislation and it needing legislation to back it. It is nothing more than the fact that I myself, Princess over here, are representation of the people, their voice. And so if the judiciary is determining based on some sample size, you're saying 40, it could be 20, it could be 60, is not representative of the people. It's just people bringing concerns to you. So you end up becoming effectively doing a political decision-making akin to writing executive orders. Is that making sense? Do you see the parallel?
I think there's executive order parallel that isn't necessarily there because we don't have an executive branch. Frankly, that is a problem.
Well, executive order
Fundamentally,
is
and that was what I
when
was kinda
the
getting at, is
president
rather
of the
than-
United States passes something into law outside of Congress, right?
Right, and that's where I'm saying we don't have a that's where fundamentally I feel like our government is broken in this DOJ, Blaine County, Los Santos County system, and all of them being legislative, and SAMA, and all of them being legislative authorities over various different.
I don't think he knows what words.
conflates
I think I
powers
broke
so
him.
much to where it in my mind, and in a perfect world, and not saying that this is feasible, but ideally there would be a 3-branch government system where the judiciary was completely removed from the legislative branch, which was completely removed from the executive branch.
Can I ask a question about that? Wasn't it decided? This is a multi-part question, but it's all yes or no. So I just want to make sure that this is said in plain English. Was it or was it not decided by the governor last time he was here that the DOJ does not have the authority to pass or to write and pass legislation without case law or some such an actual court case leading up to it?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, no,
and then,
he just affirmed that is not the case. That the court case does not have to happen. That we have authority over all legal and judicial matters, whether they see a courtroom or not.
He just stated that
He literally just said that if somebody pleads guilty in a cell, that's still a judicial matter.
Yeah.
Even if a
okay,
courtroom
I should
never
have brought
sees
this up when he was still here because I have
Yeah.
been meaning to ask this in plain English because I think that there were some differences in that.
Yeah.
Because the way I see it, the way that things should be is that if the DOJ wants to pass legislation that, obviously it's going to affect both counties, in the same way that when Nino or I passes legislation, the DOJ needs
Yeah,
to
they're
check it for
gaslighting.
constitutionality.
Yeah.
I believe that if it's vice versa,
Yeah.
the mayors should need to sign on to legislation in order for it to be passed by the DOJ if it is not directly a result of a case law.
So there 1000% that is what the governor said last time. As a what I heard in this was the example that Weiss brought up in regards to what if there's like a FIB folder or something like that, and the governor stated that there are judicial matters like they get the FIB document. We have to break into the nuances of this conversation. I don't think it's a simple answer. I didn't hear the governor effectively saying, if the justices tomorrow said that, McDonald's is illegal in San Andreas, that they could just go ahead and do so. It would still need to be a part of a judicial matter. What that means is that if a FIB document was found on somebody breaking into the Fleeca Bank, the police department confiscated said document. They're currently involved in a judicial matter due to the fact that they have charges being pressed against them. Some of those, as a part of that particular arrest, they have questionable material that may be a part of the robbery. That from there could lead to legislation being passed, making that document illegal, right? Making it contraband, something along those lines. That was my understanding of it, but the nuances of that conversation were not fully unraveled.
Right, but I want to just again kind of put this in baby talk so that I can silly little me can understand this, right? Because to me it makes sense that anyone can propose legislation. That's not something that is required to be a legislative authority. You can propose a legislation to the mayors, and the mayors can push it for you. And I believe that
the problem
Constitution
is
says that the DOJ has the ability to enact legislation.
It still needs to be a judicial matter.
The governor has said that the DOJ has legislative authority over judicial and legal matters. So that's things that are, case law. But in addition, if they have some amount of investigative backing.
The problem is,
does it not make sense that the DOJ should be able to pass legislation just like anyone?
The main thing needs to be baby
signed
fed.
onto by both mayors for it to affect both counties. Otherwise, it affects only state land.
No, because we have the constitutional authority over legal matters and over the entire state, including the counties. Now, you each individually have this, ability to modify laws within your own counties.
Not legislative, but yes, over judicial matters. So.
Right. So I think
we
again,
have,
I'm
we have
pretty sure
legislative
this is
authority over all legal and judicial matters, and that's why I specified there is a legal and judicial matter only something that sees a courtroom. To which he made clear that a legal matter doesn't mean it sees a courtroom. By fact of somebody, being found on somebody in relation to a crime, even if they don't go to a courtroom, they don't appeal it, they don't file a civil case to get their classified document back, whatever. It never sees a courtroom. That guy pleads guilty, goes off to jail. We still have the ability. He's saying now, rather than just modifying the penal code accordingly, we would post it as a legislative change.
Yes.
I then asked, does that see a public contest period like your guys's, or does it go straight in like the SAMA ones? And he said we'd get a written follow-up or something. I didn't get a clear answer.
Correct. And I think the reason is just so I
hope
don't
it'd be the SAMA way, because obviously every criminal is going to contest publicly, new crime, new contraband from thing, classified documents. I need that to proceed to my next robbery.
When an individual is arrested and there needs to be an arraignment, there needs to be a plea of guilty or not guilty, all these things, it can turn into a judicial matter. So that's the beginning avenue.
Always, and it doesn't have to, is what I clarified there. Because if they just plead guilty or not guilty in the cells and they never appeal it or take it to court,
that's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Is that just because the moment you are in the cells, it becomes that there is still a filing.
A legal matter.
Yes,
right, it is a legal matter. Yes.
Right, and so, but I think the reason for the email and the clarity is that we're discussing something that's very nuanced, and I don't think, Princess, don't cut yourself short there. I don't think anyone in this circle can tell you exactly what that's going to look like, right? It's an interpretation of when does a judicial matter begin, when does it end, et cetera, right? Because
but when we are legislating something over a legal matter, no, I would not agree that would require the mayor's signatures to proceed.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I want to say then in alternate to that, right? If you, as the DOJ, pass a legislation, the judicial authorities, whatever, not that one. If you say, I don't know, if you pass legislation that says jump boots are illegal across the state, okay? So that goes into effect regardless of the mayor's input on it. Assuming there's no contest, right? Could I then put into legislation? A legislation says that doesn't actually apply to Blaine County, and then that doesn't go against the Constitution to say actually jump boots are legal here.
No, you guys literally did that with moonshine.
You
for
can
my
do that, yes.
You
That-
literally
that's
did it
happened
with moonshine.
With weed, with moonshine.
Yeah.
Where yes, that can absolutely happen. That is each county's right to make their own choices. If it was determined to be an issue of constitutionality, we could have a say. But other than that, no, it's up to you.
So then why would we? Is the only reason, like, it seems like if the mayors were able to sign onto a legislation that the DOJ was attempting to pass in the same way that I can sign onto a legislation that Nino is passing.
I don't understand why you care so much when you've cumulatively put out less hours than Princess this week. Is my problem.
When the alternative is just to make
These
it
are all like hypothetical bullshit that doesn't. None of this shit is actually anyone's problem right now. What is the FOIAs, the arbitration, the fines rapidly increasing up in price.
For me, that's
how do I even have a discussion? They don't know what's up and what's down. They don't know what the value of $10,000 versus $100,000 is in the city.
Even less than that, and they may want completely different things. We are the only branch that gives a level of stability to the state. That doesn't mean that you can't, change things.
What stability?
But, we've just created the framework of which to make those changes off of.
So you would disagree with an amendment that would say that in order for the DOJ to pass legislation that applies to the entirety of the state, there either needs to be case law relating to it, or the mayors need to sign on to it in order for it to affect their county's jurisdiction.
Yes,
You would
Well,
disagree
Dark's
with
gonna
that?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it says right now that we have the legislative authority over things that come out of legal and judicial matters. So I don't know why we would cede that authority and require that the mayor sign on to it.
You have every option to make those changes at your discretion. I don't think changing the entire system is a necessity.
What entire system?
In that way, I would agree. I think fundamentally we need to talk about the way our government works, and that this whole Los Santos County, Blaine County thing isn't working.
But with all due respect, I think there are much more significant issues that are in my hand and Princess's hand, and right now we need the DOJ to be working. And the opinion of the counties and you know what the people are desiring is a much broader conversation that I don't think necessarily needs to be discussed right now. And excuse my little bit of passion here, but if we're gonna point at like the penal code and what the problems are with it, and why what we saw was a severe lack of communication around it. Yes, there was an opportunity that we could come in post facto and say, hey, these jump boots shouldn't have been illegal. This right there is the main issue. The conversations need to be done appropriately in advance of taking action. Because once the action is made, rolling it back is significantly more difficult. And I think you've seen that yourself, right?
Well, I mean, with regard to the jump boots, it was fixed and rolled back in what, a matter of 48 hours, 24 hours?
It shouldn't have been illegal to begin with. I imagine you don't live in San Andreas.
The reason it was brought forward to us be illegal is, again, the contraband charge, as it was written in the previous iteration of the penal code, was meant to cover items that were the direct things that you would recover from a robbery. Okay. Yeah. And it was brought to us by law enforcement agencies and confirmed to us by various criminals that we contacted during the process.
Right.
That the only method of obtaining those particular items was by robbing the cargo ship.
And before you made them illegal, you know what I would have said, Weiss? I would have said that's a fucking weird shit to say. Because you don't know that to claim that the boots even come from just the cargo ship is like the dumbest shit I've heard of my life.
I mean, that's
like,
literally what various
and I
criminals
get,
told us.
I
When
get,
we're
I
telling them,
get,
we said, where do you get them?
And I
then they said,
get
the only
that's
way
what
you
you're.
get them is this.
And I get that's what you were told, but that's the beauty of myself and Princess being in place is
Do you have other information to the contrary of that?
It doesn't.
You're missing
matter.
the point. Yeah. Is we come in and say, I understand based on what you heard is that it's coming from the cargo ship, but we are not going to accept an argument that this boot is only falling out of a cargo ship because the inherent nature of what that is cannot just be contraband. We could stop manufacturing it in a factory tomorrow. Illegalizing it is foolish, right?
Which is exactly what was done with dirty money, where it was considered dirty money when the only method of getting, like the rolled cash and stuff, was a result of drug sales. And then as soon as there was a legal method of obtaining it that was documented, phishing, it became not dirty money anymore. And that charge was eliminated. That's just how the system has worked.
But even in that case, wasn't it only considered illegal to have when it was in? Like
it needed to be used in a
with
crime.
it. Yeah.
The dirty money example is not the best.
Originally, the rolled cash was considered dirty money because the only method of obtaining it was via drug sale.
Well, then that also sounds.
Yeah,
changed later on.
We're saying philosophically that's idiotic, and this isn't aimed at any of you guys. I want to be clear. Is that the argument is idiotic, that you roll up some bills and they're illegal, that inherently a helicopter repair kit is illegal because we believe that they're only available through some, armory or this and that there needs to be other mechanisms in place for it because otherwise.
Okay, so what about PD equipment? That's literally one of the biggest problems with the Right to Property Act is theoretically PD equipment will become illegal to possess. Will become legal to possess, rather.
That would be a great argument to make on the thing, but what about PD equipment? I'm confused.
But that's not a constitutional objection. That's literally the issue. Is like That's not a constitutional basis, and that's why that legislation would theoretically allow for PD equipment. Things
I
that
feel
come
like
out.
there's a difference there because it's still it's
Yeah.
stolen goods for one thing.
Yeah.
And for
It's
another thing,
registered.
it's not something that can like potentially be produced elsewhere. A jump boot, right? A boot with a spring on it. I could put that together in a garage somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? I could make that. If someone's, I guess, creating
I
like a
make jump
police
boots in my
gun.
basement.
Nice.
I mean,
I jump and I'm
I'm
wearing
sure-
boots
yeah.
right now.
But you're saying okay, but how
Watch
do you
this.
know?
Look, I
Arguably, the difference with PD equipment is that it is inherently stamped by the government. and
Exactly.
so its origin is traceable in comparison to some of the contraband that was deemed the origin is not directly traceable. And so you could even have third party, possessors who can't trace back the origin, and it comes down to intent of the possession of, well, I know this is stolen and I'm going to possess it anyway. And then there's an intent of the possession of a stolen item, possession of contraband. And it's the same way that, like, you look at a handgun that's stolen from a police officer, you can see the stamp on there. This is property of the government for police use only. This is the person that was designated to. In comparison to an object that, like jump boots or something, there's no inherent designator to say this belongs to the cargo ship. This whatever that cargo company,
Which
Jet
is why it got
Sam.
removed.
This is property
I
of
mean,
Jet Sam.
I'm
So,
not
yeah,
saying it
I'm
should
just saying.
inherently be illegal. That is why that was the argument that was given, and that is why it was added. And then upon it got removed.
And the
next day.
basis
like I
of
said,
why
there should be-
legislation should come first, because that is the conversation, right? Because things should just not become illegal one day when you wake up, right? They should have that dialogue. That's what the
issue. This started because of the reports that we were receiving from the police department. And I actually do agree with you. I don't think they ever should have been illegal. However, if all that we are hearing, as we're not the individuals that are there on the ground seeing these things, is that these items are obtained illegally or whatever the hell, that's what we have to go off of. And we did.
And that's why the legislative process exists.
not just law
seen them.
Absolutely. And that's why
We
the
got-
legislative process should always be utilized, right? So one of the reasons why we're going back and working on a criminal code for robberies, right? What are they? What do they signify? Why is it that they need to be illegal based on the Constitution? What are the various types of robberies and their categories? What do they entail? But while you may have been getting input from select parties, the simple fact that legislative process was not used, that's not communication. That's a handful of voices. Now, right? It's kind of like in the same vein, this room right here, we may all agree that, what is it? Fucking pineapple on pizza should be illegal. If the majority of this room, or even the entirety of this room, says pineapple on pizza should be illegal, and I'm just like, well, you know what? I agree with the argument, and I threw it up. That means that there was no communication. Why was there no communication? Because that legislation was not open up to the entire state, right? To review and then rebuke. Do you see what I'm saying?
By opening it up to public, though, that's where just inherently things that should be illegal and opening it up to public contest will make
contest is a different matter, right?
That's why I was asking, and then that's
Contest is a separate matter.
I don't if it's following like the SAMA process, I don't inherently disagree. I think opening it up to public contest would be highly problematic.
Given
just
that
the
it needs
question
to
of,
be,
does it need the mayor's signature? I don't think it needs inherently the mayor's signature, but I think going through the SAMA process of it gets posted, this is a reasoning and justification for the change is posted as a legislative change.
yeah, through like
It's
case
confirmed to be
law
constitutional.
and through evidence and reports and such. Yeah.
But a case law or legal matter, right? Again, that's where it doesn't necessarily only have to be things that come out of a case. That is one. Like if we're going to go through this process and say that we can't modify the penal code at will, but we can do it based on legal matter, it cannot be constrained to only things that go to a courtroom.
To use the analogy of SAMA,
I got it, Doc. I'm good.
SAMA does a full-blown analysis right, on the drugs, et cetera, their effects on humans, and this, that, and the third. Those are published papers, of which then make
Sometimes.
their way into. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Don't you do a lot of work there?
I'm not. Hold on. I'm not saying that. Don't twist my words to say she's not doing work. That's not.
Yeah.
But sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with anything like that. Sometimes the drug testing and the updating to the dosage legislation does. Sure.
Yeah.
But is there a lot of public information, reports, other things available out the discussions that say Perry had with EMS about the Peacock Act? No. That's not. None of that's public. Ultimately, all we see is the end result legislation of what she puts forward.
The patient chain of care.
Okay, sure.
Or the FAFO, right? Like she had internal discussions with law enforcement and
Right.
EMS and all of that, but none of that is public information or
the-
report that we see as the reasoning by which the legislation was made the way it was. We just get the legislation.
But the underlining point here, right, is that you don't just hear, hey, that there's, hey, this thing is not, a jump boot is now illegal, right, is a little bit different than it was found on someone. In this case, we're believing it is now X, Y, and Z, right? There's a whole record backing it. It's not just someone says, this is what we heard on the street. Someone was arrested with the thing. There's investigative information backing it. As stated by the governor.
People got arrested with
Oh
them.
my God.
They were getting seized. People were upset that they were getting seized and wondering why. And then people were coming to us and saying, can we seize these because they are contraband?
I
as an
don't think
item that
he's
is only
intelligent
available
enough
as a
to
result
follow
of
this.
robbing.
I think
Just
that's the
like these
problem.
other items of contraband, colored USB sticks. Oh, I painted I painted a news USB stick in my basement. Yeah, somebody could have made that argument, sure. But at the end of the day, it was determined that those colored USB sticks were determined contraband because the only reasonable method known to obtain them was
Right.
that they were contraband from a bank robbery.
Okay.
So that same logic is what was applied in initially determining those things to be contraband.
Okay.
That would have happened regardless. I understand that, after further discussion and determination, it was decided that that shouldn't be the case. But that was the logic that was applied. It was based on people getting arrested with them, police coming forward and saying, should we be seizing them, should we not?
But
What's
hear
the
me out,
basis for
Weiss,
seizing
because
them if we do?
hear me out. But now you're writing legislation, right? Explaining out the why, right?
I'm saying that's fine. And if,
Yeah.
as long as it's going through the SAMA
So that
process,
solves it.
we post it, we
Yeah.
post the why and we put it up there, but not that it goes to public contest. That is too far, in my opinion. Of course, people are gonna somebody.
Oh, my Lord.
I'm not going to say everybody necessarily will, right? But somebody that's committing these crimes is going to say, "I contest making it illegal to commit this crime." Why wouldn't you? Even if you don't get the 50 signatures and put up the money for it, who gives a fuck? The money's nothing, realistically, to people who have money. It is nothing to people who are actually committing these crimes, right? So to make that and then to go to a public vote, because we'll go to an arbitration hearing, great. The law enforcement will say this should be illegal, and the criminal is going to say this shouldn't be illegal. Okay, and then it's going to say, okay, no outcome of that arbitration hearing, it has to go to a public.
I find this line of thinking extremely dangerous and hyper authoritarian. And I want to explain this thought. And is when we use extreme examples like a class 3 firearm, right? And that needs to be made illegal immediately onto the penal code, right? And the fear of let's have a comprehensive, just add the thing to the Weapon Act, right? As an example, right? Ignore this new process that we talked about for just a second with the governor and what that's going to entail, because we're going to find out afterwards. Is that if you came to me, Nino Chavez and Princess, and you're like, hey, there's some new shit on the street, like kind of Barrett does sometimes, or Dark or one of the other marshals, there's some new shit on the street. Guys, this needs to be illegal. Here, we're going to go to the weapon and driver's license legislation, well written, right? And in here, by the way, it's got possession of class 2 and 3, which, by the way, this is no longer consistent with the penal code. And we added the line in there, and we posted up. We have not even seen. There is zero evidence that anyone in the state is going to go and fight that. We should not be fearing and saying we are demanding authoritarianism in light of someone might do something. That's how authoritarianism comes. One day it's class 3s, the next day it's fucking jump boots, and that's why I keep saying jump boots, because of how ridiculous it was. And that's not me spitting in y'all's face. This is me saying, like, it's already happened. It's an example, right?
Yeah, I tend to jump on and agree a bit in that, and I was a little disappointed in the pushback I got when I made the suggestion about the director of the Marshals being a nomination by the 3 elected officials, the mayors and the SAMA director, with a confirmation from the justices, and the response being, well, they might just put some dumbass in the position, basically. But when we look at the history right now, they already appoint their law enforcement heads, the LSPD and BCSO, and we haven't had that issue. And I think that's at least garnered a level of trust.
True.
But at least having you have that level of control at the end to give the confirmation, to be like, yeah, we see your nomination, and we will give a confirmation on it to yes or no it, and at least give that final yes or no say. Although I do agree with the fact of the term limits being like, well, do we really need a new director every 3 months for a position that does inherently tend to investigate things that can take months on end to uncover?
That is inherently the biggest concern that I have, is that takes entirely already the chief and the sheriff have this fear of every time a new mayor comes in, is their job safe?
Turner's come to you and say he's worried, because I doubt that is the case, right?
I mean, if a new mayor were to get elected, you're saying he wouldn't be worried that the new mayor might
I think for those of us, and I don't want, I'm trying to find a way to be considerate here, is that we're around a lot. That fear does not exist. And it's why we had such a tenured previous chief, and why the current chief has been cooking. He hasn't even discussed a moment any of these fears. And Turner's performance and his merits of what he's done is going to carry on to the next guy. And if we, like, you know, we cannot live in fear. Democracy cannot be left in fear. If there becomes a day where some of these fears begin to manifest into reality, then it's worth having that. Otherwise, we have actual legitimate problems right in front of us. Let's worry about those.
No, but they have. It might not in LS County, but specifically with Turner, and with you have done having multiple terms in succession, right?
Okay.
But the second that there was a new mayor in Blaine County, Bones was absolutely. I remember having conversations with him about
Bones was sheriff for 9 months.
Lose his job.
He was sheriff for 9 months.
Right. But that doesn't mean that mayor turnover and the fact that a new mayor with the ability to put in their own sheriff coming into office meant that he feared for his job, and they say, you know, the security of his job. Likewise,
why is that your concern?
Whether the marshal director has to worry about political influence every 3 months of potentially being replaced.
As a citizen of San Andreas, it's a concern. But in this discussion, is that not something that the mayors and the people would arbitrate as to whether it is or isn't?
I mean,
a
frankly,
concern?
as of right now, constitutionally, the state marshals are the Department of Justice's law enforcement body.
Okay.
So no, that inherently, as it is right now, I would say no. That's not the intended purpose. The reason I'm concerned about it is because it is directly our purview. And hell, I'm the director of the department.
What if?
Wait, did you or did you not step down? Not the sidetrack, because I could have sworn you stepped down.
Replaced.
No,
it was like a pre-step
I did
down.
announce my intent to step down.
Took a 2-week notice.
I put forward to collect interest and determine the exact candidates that wanted the position, of which it's been narrowed down to 5, and we are conducting interviews as we speak.
Okay. Because
what if, to counter the concern about political influence on the director position, right? If that could be adjusted or alleviated by
I'm just, it's very, I need to leave soon because
kind of
we're debating shit. There is no intent to resolve. Is the problem? This is just hyper fear and just
rank. If that were effectively,
I don't know what the end goal is truly.
Where the only way a full-fledged marshal can be removed is through impeachment. There, like you could have an issue where they have an investigation in progress that may be put on hold. But say there's an issue like, there's a marshal that's gone rogue. They get impeached and their powers are suspended. Well, then it goes to an impeachment result. But they can't be just basically removing the at-will employment from a marshal. A full-fledged marshal being a dedicated, permanent appointment means that a director can't just be put in. Like if people are, the mayor's upset that they're being investigated and they get the next term and they just go, well, we're gonna appoint a new director who's going to terminate that marshal who keeps investigating me and make sure that the new director can't investigate me.
Yeah.
If full marshals are a permanent appointment and can only be removed by impeachment, could that alleviate that concern?
I want to direct us back to the penal code because that's what we originally started discussing, right? The original, to roll it all back. I get there was reasons you guys did stuff. It's fine. But I don't want to see new charges come into place without legislation. I think we've all agreed to that. So that roadblock's out of the way. The mechanism and the details and the nuance as to how that happens, that's for another day. Once we get the further clarity from the governor, once maybe the legislative document is updated, we'll see. But right now, these fines that have been altered are absolutely cooked.
Like what
now,
specifically?
I have to dip, y'all. I just realized what time it is. Is there anything else that's last minute for me?
No, I think we're good.
I think you're right.
Oh, I need food. Anyone have food?
Yes. We do.
Yeah, we'll get that handled.
Do you have any food, Barrett? Any leftover food?
I do not. I have a drink.
Shit. Oh, you got some. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you all very
Cut
much.
this short so we can at least do.
Bye, Barrett.
I don't think there is anything specific. It in general is rather egregious.
I don't give a fuck about the governor. I need Chris fucking Peters.
So
Chris, I need you.
Okay. Let me see. I'm trying to pull this up. Penal code. There we go. The average fines have increased anywhere from 226% all the way up to 923%.
Right, because they were reduced by 1,000%, like back in the day when Crane reduced everything in the penal code by 1,000%.
This is fine.
Oh.
Or 900% or whatever. It took it to 1/10 of whatever it was beforehand when the economy, when we all came back and everything was fucked and everything was way too expensive that nobody could afford anything, and all of the penal code across the board was reduced by 90 whatever percent. There are some things that, again, proportionally were only brought up a little bit, and there were some things that were restored back to the high amount that they should have been because they were excessively and egregiously
Okay, but just let me get my thought out for a second because I understand that none of that stuff. That's a lot of words that don't mean anything to me. So, how was it determined that these were? How did these numbers come about? What methodology was used?
All charges in the entire penal code were put into a spreadsheet, right, where we could see all of the things in relation to each other.
Okay.
And then, as certain charges were suggested amongst across the entire room, originally was drafted in coordination with the clerks and the members of the public the clerks were working with.
Okay.
The judges were then brought in to take a look at it. Some modifications were made where things didn't make sense to us, like I said, one of the examples.
But what was the methodology? So there was an Excel sheet. Justices looked at it. I got that far so far.
Every judge, every clerk, every court clerk, every county clerk, members of the PD high commands, both PD high commands and command, it was extended all the way down.
Was there any data used?
Yes, the crimes that people have been arrested for,
like economic data. How much are people making? How much are in the banks?
Yeah, exactly. What exactly? What were people getting from the banks? What was the value of that in relation to what the charges were looking like? What would it cost to get caught with a
Is
reasonable
there-
amount of like what you would typically have a gun, maybe a little bit of contraband.
Is
some
any of this
Schedule II drug.
documented? Not the changes, but how the numbers came about.
I don't know exactly what there isn't like a bona fide document. It was a iteration of a sheet that went back and forth constantly, and discussions with the
Okay.
commands and
So-
in-city discussions of meetings that we had upstairs or I guess downstairs from here.
So-
with the PD commands and high commands, called various different criminal aspects and perspectives.
Okay. So
to get information, things like what do you get from this? How much is an ink bag worth? Things like that. How many ink bags do you get from this?
Okay.
All of those things were taken into consideration as the relative times fines were, I guess more specifically the fines in that aspect were being determined, and then the reasonable amount of time, obviously keeping in mind the cap that we had of the 360 across the board. And then looking
I
at the
know
seriousness of
he's
these
just
offenses
lying and
internally
making up
against
shit. I'm
each
not
other,
stupid.
And what
Yeah,
made sense
I know,
doesn't
Chad.
make sense that robbing somebody of an item less than $1,000 was more punitive than an act of torture. No, obviously an act of torture is worse. So we're going to ratchet that up accordingly. No.
Okay. I know that who ran this, because I know this is what might have been said to you, but I can tell you that LSPD High Command did not look at this. I didn't look at it. And the previous mayor didn't look at it. I know that because when it occurred, it was a shock.
I guarantee you both PD High Command. Hold on, Murray can come over here and tell you who exactly was in the room. I don't remember which. I'm pretty sure Moss was there.
In the room?
Yes.
So how long was that meeting?
4 or 5 hours.
Okay,
We were there
so you're
all
saying
fucking day, and that was one meeting where the high commands came in, and then there were several meetings after that took place.
So that
after they had
this is
time to
perfect.
review.
Okay, and who is in that meeting? Who are
Clerks.
representing the people?
Clerks.
The clerks were representing the people.
The clerks again were the main ones. The court clerks were the main ones driving this forward until it got to the point of judge review, and then the judges gave input, and then the justices reviewed and gave finalized things.
Okay, I know he's lying, by the way.
At the point it got to me specifically, where I was in the room for the first time up there for that
So-
5-hour meeting.
so
I
here-
said, well,
here's the issue
where's
that
the
I
PDs?
see.
And then I dragged the PDs in and said,
Yeah.
hey, they need to, we need to get their perspectives as well. At which point, their PD commands gave a lot of insight as to some of the things that were misconstrued in a certain way, and things that were frankly too high, and things were brought down accordingly.
I got
The
you.
simplification of the robberies and the fact that there were like 8 different robbery charges and what gets applied where, and the decision to cut that down into just the 3, and kind of make them blankets for each particular different types of situation.
I think this
all of
is
that came
this
into
is
play as
kind
part
of the
this discussion.
thing, right? Like, well, I understand. This is like a closed door discussion from the public, in which effectively decisions were made without any economical data. It may, while it may seem that that it may have existed in that meeting, it reasonably didn't exist, because
Can you give me an example of that?
Of what? Well, let me
You're saying that the
let me
economics don't make
explain
sense.
the thought, because I didn't interrupt you, so let me kind of lay the table a little bit. There was a meeting with some people that were invited, right? But the democratically elected authorities, myself and the mayor, the previous mayor, were not present. We are the voice of the people. We have information that the PD is not going to have, right? Information that you're not going to have. Information the clerks aren't going to have. How people feel, how people, what kind of money do they truly have, right? Versus what the perception is. All these sort of things. And as a consequence, that's why I'm saying it is effectively a closed off meeting. While there may have been many people in the room, it was still closed off in that it was only a subset of society, right? And in turn, the next thing is there was no economic data, right? Because economic data implies that if right now I was like, hey, can you give me a document, sort of like Barrett's got documents on housing, how much people are paying, etc. There is none. So if there is none, then it never existed. There may have been things that people said, right? Hey, there's this much in Polito Bank. But if it's not in a document, there's no way that I can believe that it ever existed. So without these two facets in place, it's hard to believe that these changes are justified, right?
But you're talking about Barrett pulling tax records. I can't go subpoena the Polito Bank and ask them how much money they had in the bank. That's not
Yes, you
a
can.
record that is. No, you cannot. What?
Why not? I don't want to get hung up on this, but
I mean,
but
you're
I would,
suggesting something that's not possible. So that's what, like, where would you deliver that subpoena? Upon whom would you deliver that subpoena to get that information?
you would give it to Mr. Polito Bank. I don't know. You fucking go.
But that's realistically, right? Because the way a subpoena works,
so you give it to him, and then
to the
you know
Department of
a very
Justice, and I
sincere
say-
secretary might produce you an average output of stuff. You know what I mean? Of like how much shit's getting busted out of there. Like, why wouldn't it be? Like, unless you were told no, I don't understand why he wouldn't be able to say no. You know what I mean? Or alternatively, if you had to only manage based on police records, right, then you would pull the police records and utilize that, and you throw it into a document. So I'm just trying to picture this, right? If I had a meeting with, some of my staff that's still sitting there, surprisingly, for example, paychecks. I open up a document and I put the numbers in there. I've extracted stuff. I've written down stuff. And so without it being written down, right, and like with where it came from, how do you even begin the conversation? Like, for example, if I heard during the conversation that
I need cancer. I need
know-
her to bring me a gun and some cocaine, and then we'll get the shit done.
What?
Oh my fucking god!
Who is that?
Yeah.
No.
I don't care. Never mind.
I'm gonna have a headache.
It's just
So,
the chief of EMS. nothing
the
like that.
charges for a robbery, right? You mentioned earlier, like, we saw how much are people making out of this, how much is this, how much is that. Am I correct to say none of it was written down, right? So what's the authenticity of it, right? It's word on the street, right?
Where that information came from is written down. I don't remember exactly where in the clerk documents it's available, but they documented all that shit.
Okay.
Where that information was
Can we
coming
have
from.
it?
I can try to find it.
Yeah.
A lot of the clerks that were around during that period are no longer not around
So
anymore.
maybe they never existed. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
I mean, but is there any that you're pointing to that are an issue that
Yes.
are not economic? Can you give me an
all
example
of them.
that?
Because and that could make you sulk a little bit there, but like just forwardly, so much shit was changed, the people are not going to review it all, right? And
Okay, so
and-
I mean,
and
for
as a-
example, robbery of a high security institution. If I remember correctly, I have to go ask, I guess.
or
maybe.
or we revert it all.
What?
I'm
Yeah.
having
What it was
PTSD.
before was abysmally low. So, for example, robbery of a high security institution. I believe what the information that we were given was that Maze Bank was giving approximately $500,000.
It's kind of like,
and so we looked at what does that look like if 6 people get caught? It currently, based on that, is
Wait,
320.
say that again. What did you say? You heard what?
I believe the information that was provided to us was that the Maze Bank was paying out about $500,000.
Okay. Was it vetted?
I believe it was provided by, confirmed with a couple, at least a few individuals confirming that was roughly, and
Like-
there was not specific numbers of exactly when you hit this, you get because that's not realistically information that we should even have available when we're making these determinations. It's a relative factor.
I don't think so. I know it's not. It's not strange at all. There's records of people that got arrested with the money. There is
Which is, I'm pretty sure where that information came from.
us
but
subpoenaing a financial institute, Maze Bank, and us sending it. They can come back and say "fuck you," but that's not something we should take off the table. Like I'm
Why is the amount that the officers gave us
not correct. Yeah, what
valid,
information are you basing it off of
Why
that
does
you
it
know
have to
that
be
not to be accurate?
subpoenaed
I don't
to the
see it.
bags?
Where's the data? Right?
So
That's what
it's
I'm
not
going
that
back
you
to.
saying it isn't accurate. You're just saying you don't know.
I cannot assume something exists when it cannot be produced by the justices that oversaw the penal code changes, right? I can't just, trust me, bro, on this.
Have you
right?
asked like any of your own police department, the ones that
You're-
gave us that
you
information?
changed the penal code. It was your ultimate decision, right? So
I'm not
just as
I'm not saying
Yes,
that
and you're
we
the one
didn't
with the
do our. I'm
concerns.
saying we did this review in speaking with the
Ye-
high command of your law enforcement department. So if you're saying that that was incorrect, have you talked to your own law enforcement department about it?
what the fuck are you saying right now? What do you mean?
That
What
if
do
you
you
have
mean?
concerns regarding the numbers, you fact check?
Guys,
Yeah, just
guys,
if you're concerned about it
guys,
and you're saying that it's an issue and that numbers
You-
are not economically correct, have you,
you're the arbiter of the change. What do you mean?
Yes.
I'm
and
telling
we
you
do
where that
research.
information
You can do
came
yours
from,
if
and
you're
you're saying
concerned.
it's not valid. So I'm saying on
You-
what basis
you-
are you saying it's not
You're
valid?
driving so deep into the debate, bro, right? That it's like missing the overall point here, right? When I stated that all of these charges are of concern, you said, "What about this charge? Let's go deep dive into it."
No, I asked you for an
Yeah.
example.
Yes, and I said,
I said
we're
what
not going to
charge
go
is-
through
what
all
char-
of them.
And you said the robberies, but
Yeah.
on what basis? That's what I don't understand. What charges specifically are not economically correct and based on what data? Because we did a lot of review.
What
with
is
a lot of opinions on
economically correct?
like I said, ultimately what we determined was a relative reasonable number to put in there based on
Show me the
payouts of
information.
certain things.
Thank you, Sean.
I think it's been very clear already that
That
the
you don't
information,
have it.
exists, but the law doesn't
Yes,
currently have it.
which is why we're saying we'll bring it back, and then we'll make sure that it's all legislatively put in place, and that things are documented and recorded, right? Because otherwise, if
there's
we go
specific
into
things that we want to change, that's fine. But we're not just going to mass roll back the penal code back to what it was. That's definitely not. Gonna
Yes.
happen.
Okay,
It's
well-
not happening. Just like the last time you requested something like this.
No, last time
No,
we
it
did
did
actually
happen,
revert it back,
actually.
and
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
God,
not
sorry,
that's not
you,
where
Yes.
this is going to go down. That's not.
Yes.
The one that I fought against, really.
Yeah.
So much time, energy, effort, work went into that we're not just going to revert it back to the way it was. If there are specific things.
Was
and
there
issues
though?
That are
Was
of
there?
concern.
Like,
Yes.
and I want
Weeks
you to
and weeks and weeks of work went into this, Nino, and like countless hours
How?
from 40 plus people.
Explain to me, just please, for the love of God, how did you guys spend weeks? And I'm just trying to understand, right? Because everything that I get brought my way is that people are like fucked on the streets, right? They literally have no other option if they're a criminal to start grinding for a bigger gang, right? We got people that have been in the city for a little bit. They get hit with like some kind of charge, and then all of a sudden they're so desperately in the negative, they're absolutely fucked. Now, I'm not saying I'm not saying here that these individuals should, they should probably not commit crime, right? They probably shouldn't use this and that. But when I need to answer the question as to why these charges have gone up to 1,000% higher, and the only thing I'm getting in return is we don't have the documentation, that's concerning, right?
No, but there might be documentation depending on
yes.
what charge you're asking about.
You're
That's why I'm
dropping
asking
this
for
on us
specific
right
examples.
here, even though we haven't done this research,
The-
and then just claiming. That we
Also,
have
I would
nothing
like to point out that, and it's an unfortunate truth, but the amount of work that you put into something does not mean that it has to stay there forever. Otherwise, I mean, there's a lot of things that a lot of work has been put into, but just keeping those like that just because you put the work into it is like that doesn't.
I'm
mean
saying
anything.
that, but just
the
saying
work
that
was
there,
put in to make sure it's
there's
right.
not documentation of the work, delete it all. That's also not a fair thing to do either. If there's
I-
specific things or
there
issues
is.
that need to get addressed, let's deal with them.
Because
I'm
we're the
totally open to
government.
that.
We serve the people. And so the problem becomes this, right? Is now I'm hearing two things. It might exist, it might not exist. Some of the clerks aren't there anymore. At the end of the day, you guys are the judiciary. You're responsible for the documentation. Just as even I may step out of office, every single discretionary spending, every single internal vote, every single thing is all documented by my team. Like if I ask Michael right there, what date, who voted, all that, we have it all. We have it all because
we have all that too. I don't have the underlying data that led to that decision readily at my disposal at the snap of a finger from a decision that was made months ago. My apologies.
Okay. You don't.
If there are
Okay, so
specific
you
things
do
or
have
examples
all
of
of it.
charges that you need. I have to go back and ask who was still around that had that data compiled, and like you
That
have
means
Michael that is
yeah.
there at your whim and
So
is
it
there
might
for you
exist.
from
Intended to be
day
something
one. I
entirely
don't have that
different.
same luxury.
So why
So
would
it
we have
might
that?
exist.
It depends. What are you asking
Yes.
for?
So it's all
Specifically about what charge?
Maybe I'm not understanding this because was there one big meeting on all these charges, or were these like multiple meetings about different charges?
Multiple
like-
meetings about
Both.
different charges and different pieces of it
Yes.
spanning over the course of several weeks.
And then it was just all done at once?
All of it was compiled into a finalized sheet that was then, we had that big meeting, and then all of PD went and they came back to us with some additional modifications based on that.
I'm
then all
having
the justices
trouble
then voted
believing
on.
this simply because this sounds so stupid. Like, I don't understand.
It's not, I mean,
That
like, why?
meetings were had in order to make sure things. were
Why
correct.
would you? Why would you ever go and have all like months long, week long, and then you go dump it all at once? That makes it impossible to even like discuss.
What? Wow, we addressed
We are
it piece by
discussing
piece. We had to do it piece by piece because of how unwieldy it is, and then ultimately it all has to be one cohesive thing. Everything relative to the other charge in the penal code needs to make sense. So of course it has to be done as one big chunk, because as if we just looked at it piece by piece and didn't compare it.
Oh my
relatively to
Lord, have
everything,
mercy!
You'd have things like I said before of, something crazy like active torture being lower than something that doesn't make sense for it to be lower based on the severity of the actual action.
How long did this process take?
3 to 4 weeks.
Okay. In those 3 to 4
And
weeks,
we mentioned it at our meetings a couple times. We were like, "Hey, we're working on a massive penal code update. That the clerks have been working on this for a while."
Yes,
we
you
told
did.
You
And then
guys
it just-
ahead of time that hey, the times and fines. Let's reset that down to 0 because we're going to bring this in soon.
No.
By.
Listen. We knew something was coming. We were expecting a document. Not we woke up one day and there's 100 changes, right?
Also, can we agree that what we've just discussed with the governor says that those penal code changes were made outside of jurisdictional authority? Like there needed to be more for that.
No, he said he understands why we did the big change as it was, and that was fine.
No,
but
he
then going
didn't!
forward, it needed to be done.
No,
as
he didn't.
legislation. Those were literally exactly
These guys, okay.
Okay, but and in terms of what Nino is saying, I mean, it would not be the first time that a significant amount of work has been rolled back because of some issue with the way that it was originally put in place.
No.
Example
Hey,
being all of Angel's legislation.
we can't get in the heart of the matter. Is
though, and like I said, that the changes will stay. But if there are specific things that you feel are not economically accurate or that need to be modified back down because they're overly punitive, let's talk about them and address them and get them fixed.
Well,
and
okay.
we can do it, but we post a
And I'm-
legislation to back that. And
I'm
say,
trying to get there, but we don't even. So 3 weeks it took, right? Were in those 3 weeks, was it the same set of individuals?
No. I mean, the same set of the clerks were involved throughout the entire
Okay.
process because they were the
I
ones
get it.
actually
So
doing the
explain to
documentation.
me
But there were
how it
various
happened.
different POVs coming through. They were
Like-
talking to various different members of the public.
Tell me how it happened.
criminals,
Just explain.
cops.
I get it. All these people are coming, and like, there's like, but like, just coherently explain to me what took place in those 3 weeks. Like,
A barrage of discussions between clerks and like I just said, various different members of the public, criminals that were committing crime, various different officers, ultimately moving
was
up
there
to
a
judges and the commands and
methodology?
PDs.
Like, what was the like? I'll give you an example of what I'm looking for, right? And I'm gonna kind of play this out. We announced to the police department, we announced to the clerks, we announced to our internal DOJ, we are going and reviewing all these changes. Michael, I want you to get an Excel sheet and put all the charges in. And and categorize them. All right, we're taking notes, all right, and writing down all these details. It's all in a document, right? So we know who's coming in, who's making the things. We're now discussing it. That's like a process, right? That I'm describing. We know who arrived. We know who made this. I'm sorry?
That whole initial part of the process up to the point of the sheet getting created and it being brought forward to the judge, all of that was done by the clerk team.
And so if, for example, right, because there's like 100+ charges in here, negligent driving went from $300 to $1,000. Why?
The rates of the civilian jobs were looked at on an hourly basis, and it was determined that $300 was like a few minutes, maybe 10, 15 minutes of work, and it wasn't a significant enough penalty, essentially, to dissuade the behavior accordingly, and in line with the other charges of the penal code, was pretty relatively low.
I want to ask him what
For
his
something
thoughts
as-
on
and then,
tariffs are
as
so
bad
badly.
as the negligent driving and driving with no regard to traffic laws. I mean,
Where are
and
you?
it was looked
Where are
at
you?
of
Where are you getting this from?
the civilian job numbers.
No. Like, is this from your memory, or I'm trying to? You
No, this is
referencing
just based-
something?
This is from my memory of this is how these things were determined. Was, you know, I believe the minimum charge in the entire MDT now is $1,000. That's the least expensive charge across the board, and then your negligent driving on that scale was at the very minimum of the scale of severity of charges.
You understand the basis of all this, right? Is all this changed, and no one knows why. Having to, like, not myself, not Princess, we got to come to you and be like, please
Well, Princess
explain to
wasn't
us.
the mayor at the time. It was Pred, and we got zero fucking
mumbles
no
at this point.
real help from Pred's office at all at the time. I mean, we barely got Pred to show up at the meetings. I don't,
Brother, you guys barely show up. Let's throw that at Pred. So
I mean, I was at the meetings. I missed one because I was on LOA.
Yeah. All right.
But and we haven't had the meeting since.
Okay.
But at every meeting there was, I was at, except the one that I couldn't make.
Right,
I tried my best. Fred was at none, maybe one of the meetings.
Brother, let's no more deflection, no much projection.
My point is,
it's just
Elena.
Yeah.
But you're saying Elena doesn't know about these things. Elena wasn't there, so that's not a
No,
fair thing to.
The people
to
shouldn't
criticize
have to
about.
be there to get the information. Is the point, right? It's like that's why these things are publicized, right? And if we want to bring it down to that, that means that because she's there, there's no way she can speak to any of it, right? This is why we talked about with the governor why the legislation is needed, because it explains
We're
it
beating
all.
a dead horse because we've already
right?
agreed that the legislative. That's
Absolutely. And so now we are in a position where a bunch of dog shit charges were changed up, and
But you're
while
not
it's under
explaining
while it's
how
in
they're dog shit. You're just assuming that because these
because
changes were
I'm
made the
telling
way
you
they were,
as
they're bad.
as the mayor, by the way, had more votes last election without campaigning than the previous two. Am giving you that opinion as an aggregate opinion of the people of San Andreas. Now, and as a aggregate opinion, we need some sort of cohesive rollback on the severity of these fines. Now, we can go and say, you guys spent 3 weeks doing something. I don't know what you were doing for 3 weeks, right? It may have felt like a lot of work, but the people's opinion was not played into it. And unless if you tomorrow or in the next, over the weekend, can bring out some documentation that shows the logic that was used to make these fine changes, my opinion could change, right? But we don't have that documentation. All I know is the burden of fines are driving people in a very negative direction. And it's not one against criminality, right? So,
if there are specific charges or issues that you'd like to bring forward as they're being overly punitive, I'm happy to resolve that. That's fine. I have no issue with that. I want to see the penal code serve the state as best as possible.
Good. and I
don't
hope you
think
understand.
Reverting them back to the nothingness that it was before is the appropriate way of doing that. I don't think the justices are going to buy into that, especially after what we just said as to how the fact that they understood why that was done and that it was fine.
Why
Going
should
forward,
the
I have no
people?
issue.
Why should the people take on the burden?
What do you?
What burden?
What?
Why should you don't want to take on y'all made the decision that over 3 weeks you had some select individuals determine what the fine should be, right? The people were not able to weigh in. And then the changes came in. And now you're saying the burden is on the people that now they have to go and point out of 150 charges what the issue is because you don't want to roll
Because
it
a
back.
lot of them are charged for good reason. So if there are ones that
Good
people have
reason in your
concerns with and
mind, you're
issues
not a
with,
political
then
party,
Then just say
right?
which ones.
What do you understand
which charges
that?
are an issue
Do you understand
and-
what you're saying is what by virtue of you saying you guys have to go and look through all 150 and then give us a story about why this one is bad and this one is, you're putting the burden back onto the people, right? That's the burden that you're putting back on the people. You say live with it or come back and we got to fight each one of these things individually, right? Are you while you may not agree, all right, and may not want to do that, do you understand what is being said at least?
May not want to do what? Like, what are you're saying? Just roll it
May
back.
not want to roll it back. Well, you may not want to roll it back.
Push forward individually every one of the 150 changes separately,
Yes.
so that you'd have to review them all anyway and object to the ones you actually care about anyway.
Correct. Yes.
Why go through that whole process instead of just objecting to the ones you have an issue with? I don't get it.
I don't understand.
That's just
I'll
a
be
completely
entirely honest.
useless step.
Weiss, I don't have much longer. We should probably cut this short since it's not going to go anywhere, and actually try to do one of these interviews if we can.
I'm trying. I'm not trying to be
No,
unreasonable. I promise.
I'll explain again.
I'll explain again. Put 150 charges forward, changes
on
forward
that note,
individually,
I'm
so
out.
that you can
Yeah.
object to them on a
Yes.
one-by-one basis. You'd be doing that anyway.
Do you recognize? Do you? This is where we're sort of hung up. Do you understand what I mean by the burden onto the people?
I'm saying that burden would exist anyway if these charges were pushed on a
It
one-by-one basis rather than the whole penal code. You'd still have to review each of the changes one by one and object to each of those changes one by one with the ones that you have an issue with.
No. If you were to revert it, the burden's removed, right?
No, it's not, because we would still push forward every one of the changes, even with a backing and justification for each one and an explanation. If there are ones that you feel are not appropriate, you would still have to object to those on a one-by-one basis.
We're talking about a financial burden, not the work to review each and everything.
What's the financial? Wait, what? What's the financial burden?
Why is Quentin saying he's gonna go to bed soon if we're gonna do his
If you're saying you want us to waive the financial burden of bringing forward the contest for the penal code charges, sure. I don't care about the money. I don't give the slightest bit of a fuck about the money. That's not what it's about. Also, you could do it as one, and it's like what, 50 grand? If you guys do it, yeah, 50. What, bro? Who cares?
Weiss.
But I'll just waive the money. What's up? Okay, we have to
Quentin's
do
gonna
what, the
bed
Marshall
soon for his
interview
interview.
shit? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right.
Cutting and just
you're good.
Like I said, if we did that, we'd push all the things one by one anyway, and then they'd still have to contest them on a one-by-one basis, which would still be more like that doesn't make any sense. Just tell us which ones there's an issue with, and let's fix it.
Okay.
Like, we just
All right.
talk about it and come together and fix it. It's that
All right.
simple.
Here's what we'll do. We'll make we'll take this document, we'll put our numbers on it, and then we'll see which ones we disagree with. The ones you disagree with, we'll discuss. The ones you don't disagree with, we change. How does that sound?
But I guess so I guess same thing that you were just asking. What's the logic, or is it just across the board? There's going to be a reduction of the numbers. Are there specific charges?
I'll give you a document. You know what I mean?
Okay,
So,
yeah, that's fine. If you want to put it together, we'll take.
We'll take it. We'll go through it. We'll say, okay, this should be this reason. We'll put it in. We'll, change the numbers as we see fit. We'll give it to you. If you disagree with any of them, we can talk about it. The ones you don't disagree, just change it. You know what I mean? Saves you trouble, saves us trouble. Okay, easy. Now, if we lose the documentation along the way, you know, just don't worry about it too much.
No, I mean, like I said, if there's a sheet there, the charge, the new time, the new fine, and like a brief note as to what the issue is, then sure, we can absolutely take a look at that and come to an agreement on things that are
All right.
overly punitive. The goal is not to be overly punitive in any way, but
It is so
needs to make sense.
punitive. I'm actually shocked that you haven't heard this. Yeah. Here. Look, I'm gonna shoot straight. Rice.
It's not that it's not.
I'm gonna shoot
punitive,
straight.
right?
Rice. I genuinely believe that you have a lot of bad actors talking to you. Not necessarily because they're inherently malicious, but because they come from a very particular walk of life. What we are subject to hearing time and time again is some of these charges are so punitive. You're gonna end up becoming some bigger crew's grinder, or you're gonna end up fucking just sitting at senior buns all day, or you're gonna have no purpose left. And this is the beginning of that conversation. Inherently, law enforcement, whether you like this, want to hear this or not, do not have an economic background. They don't know how much money people truly have, right? We don't have access to their bank account information, right? There's also a reality on the ground is that the largest voices are usually the conglomerate gang organizations, the ones that do have a lot. Why? Because the people that are bringing them the money can't fucking run their own shit themselves. I've, in this last 3 weeks, seen people try to even start something up only for one incident completely wiping them out. And I don't mean the good kind of wipe either, right? So you're going to have directives. You're going to get directives inherently from law enforcement. Not to say that they're bad people, but they run off their own information, right? Is that we want to stop this.
I don't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I don't want to lose that. What was that situation? Like, what was that one thing that they hit and got caught with that wiped them out? Like, what? Give me one, please. I'm trying to understand so I can go in and look at this and try to figure out what the issue is. They
the average kit you need to do a bank truck, as an example.
Okay.
Right?
So
but that's a much broader.
To...
That's a much broader conversation, right? And that's why I don't want to go into the particulars, because then we have to get into like why are people bringing class 2s to a bank truck and this other fucking horse shit. Mostly this is like a G6 problem, but they're already being discussed with.
So it's the possession of the class 2s that was the issue. Is it like it's because I'm looking at like for example, robbery of a low security institute, or sorry, robbery of a security firm, right? Is it 25K? If I remember correctly, they were getting like 80-ish bags or something of
we're up
things,
2 levels. Let's not go all the way into the basement. You know what I mean? Because if we go into the basement, then we have to discuss everything surrounding it, which you were probably not aware of at this time, which I don't mind discussing.
But that's
the
level we went into when looking at these charges. That's why I'm telling you how much work went into it. I don't think you had the right people at the table. Work doesn't mean. Can I make? Do you mind if I make an analogy that hopefully you won't bother you guys too much? Hopefully, sure, but make it brief because Weiss.
I'm sure Trump worked really fucking hard on those tariffs. He worked really fucking hard. But I hope to fucking God he doesn't pull him on April. Yeah. I hope to God he doesn't continue through on the 9th. I'm just saying, keep that in mind. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna steal from this room.
Wait, if you're done, we're going to be in the meeting
room I'm coming.
downstairs.
All right, Nino, we'll chat soon. I'll be around more. So.
All right. It's was I unclear in what I was saying?
Oh
about
no,
the
you
burden?
were not. You were not unclear.
Yeah.
I want to smack my head against the table because he basically insinuated I was fucking lazy. And so I got as well.
Oh, I know how much work you guys do. I really do. The concerning bit about it was that I think they only heard 20% of what the governor stated in regards to them passing similar to Sama. And I think in their brain, they were like, oh, we want to make this illegal. We can do that now. Ha. And it was it still needs to be a judicial matter.
Yeah, it has to be a judicial matter. It has to have the reasoning, the backing, like basically what I did with the OOPS legislation.
Yes, exactly.
Where I basically took the penal code, saw that wording, and then put it into legislation. So it kept that penal code backing. Like it had that backing for that penal code now. so you can, like, if somebody goes to court and goes, yeah, I want to charge this. Why? Because it's in this piece of legislation right here, here, here. Like, that's the reason why they
do
I
they
don't know
do
how
this?
it
Do
wasn't simple.
do they do this just because they're like, you know what, Nino? If we piss him off right before the next election, he'll run again. Do you think that's what's happening here?
Possibly.
It just feels like that. There's no way. They were lying to the governor's face. I genuinely was just in shock at how much like lying came out of their mouth. Like when they're like, you knew about this. One of your guys made the document. I'm like, Archibald wrote the document. Angel said it was dog shit. We're not going to do it. You guys threw it away and he wasn't even fucking involved. So how dare you say that? We had all he did is coalesce a set of charges for what needed legislation. And they said, fuck no, we're not writing any legislation. That was their position. And so all of a sudden now the governor's saying this and they're just spitting all kinds of, I have never seen that much fucking just, someone needs to do a psychoanalysis of this. Like, is it malicious? Is it like an incompetence? Is it like, it's like the teacher caught you didn't do homework and you are very good at making up lies. Like, it's just, it's amazing. I will say though, I held back. And I wanted, I genuinely wanted
held back.
Oh yeah, because I saw the governor struggling with Weiss over here, and I'm like, I want him to feel what we're feeling, because then he may understand our concerns a bit more, right? And that was my strategy, because otherwise, if I was yapping like I did with Weiss just now, we wouldn't have been even less so productive. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's tough.
I really want to smack my head against the table. Just
they said in the same fucking breath. Do you remember the part where they said we're not a political entity or whatever the fuck?
Yeah.
But then 10 minutes later, they're describing a fucking political entity, right? We should be able to pick the marshal. What do you mean we should be able to? What does that mean? The marshals exist as a function. Not because you're given some authority because you want to play God, right? Like, what is?
I'm not gonna lie. When they were describing like how they get the justices, did anyone else feel like they were talking about a gang?
Oh my God, yes. I wanted to say, you're literally saying, oh yeah, we make all the decisions. Yeah, that's why Grayson got kicked the fuck out of the DOJ, right?
It's just the way we're like, we choose people that we think will fit this role.
No,
so a gang.
It's fit our ideology. It's just fucking disgusting.
No offense, Sean.
Nope,
no offense, Sean.
Sean's a good one.
We love you.
Yeah.
No, it's not you guys. It's I feel like I have too much information on the top.
You like Sean?
I don't know. I have had to lie a lot. I've had to do a lot of things many years ago, right? Just to get by. And they are not very good at it. I think it fucking read on their face. I mean, I don't believe a word they're saying. I don't. I know better than that. We have evidence pointing at that.
Also, as a judge, what was kind of frustrating for me was the statement about, like when they're talking about signatures, and it's like, oh, well, like if a signature's on there, we did it, but we just had the issue a week ago, 2 weeks ago, where that wasn't true. And like people know that.
Yeah.
And then they kind of just said that in front of everybody who knows that that's not true.
Look,
and then doubled down on it. Like,
my God. It's, I mean, that was the strategy, is just Weiss just spoke over everybody and everything's going to be okay.
Honestly,
But
Weiss did not shut up.
No.
Like, he wasn't letting anyone else speak either.
But for someone that's been, for someone who's been on duty for 11 hours this last 3 months, it's a little strange how I was going to say it, but I didn't know if it was appropriate. I'm kind of regretting it now. Is that he was very invested in the future of San Andreas for someone who's been here, who's been clocked in 11 hours in 3 months.
Exactly.
While I can understand that there's probably a lot of things that, happen in Bermuda or wherever the fuck the DOJ meets up, it doesn't coincide with any sensibility here, right? Because you can't reasonably know how anything works. You can't, right? You can't ascertain what is important versus what isn't important. That's why I want him to shut the fuck up over this two government thing. Like, with all due respect, you're not seeing what people see on a day-to-day basis. It is true, mind you, that a lot of people do want to see, you know, the counties into one, but you know, you're not going to be able to ascertain it that way. You know what I mean? Like, that's
It's
not
kind of just like what the governor said. If the Blaine County mayor wants to secede into the Los Santos or vice versa, then they could just do that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's also like saying, like, the way that he was like talking a lot, like saying he's invested in it. It's almost like it's just reminding me of the hospital, literally, where we need this change because we see it on a day-to-day basis, and then we get shut down by the board. That is literally how this entire conversation was like. That's how it felt like to me.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I do think some of these matters are still going to be discussed. I think it's important for everybody. I think the heart of it is people's voice matter. We cannot rely on fear, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that scares me the most is I feel like I'm witnessing what I witnessed last time, is that absent the governor literally writing something and signing something, they're going to take what they liked, the sentences that they liked from what he said, and manufacture their own reality. And I think a lot of it actually, quite truthfully, comes from incompetence. And this isn't meant to be a shot at them. It is maybe a little bit. But I don't think they understood some of the nuanced statements that the governor was making, like why it is a judicial matter if they discover something as a part of the arrest, and how that can be manifested into legislation and goes from there, and why that's a necessity. In the same way that, and this is the part that honestly I genuinely wanted to jump across and strangle the guy, is when he, number one, claimed that the director document was reviewed by us and that it was taking too long. We got that review. You were with us, I believe. We reviewed that shit in like 4 days. They sat on it for 3 months. But then the second was when they pointed out the penal code change, and they said, you approved it. And we're like, no, you were the mechanism.
We all found out the same day, because I was with Sean. I wasn't with Sean. I was with Arcadia and everyone in City Hall when they just announced it. And like, no one knew when that was going up or anything about it before they did it.
No, yeah, it was that one. That's where I really realized the kind of manipulation that was taking place, because the inference was we gave them the ability and signed into legislation the ability for the justices to be able to change shit at a whim. I still have the comments, the full-blown discussions in there. We said this will remain as an emergency in case there needs to be, but the DOJ will be the mechanism. They're the ones who physically go on the computer system and change it. Nobody else, right? The cops can't do
Similar
it.
to the Constitution
I can't do
saying
it.
the voting.
Exactly. But for some reason, he, to my face, was willing to say, we agreed to it. I have the document right over here, like on my phone. I'm looking at it. It's all in there. So it's like, just how am I supposed to, when I know what was said in the meeting, when I see what's in these comments, how am I supposed to trust anything coming out of his mouth? It's all make believe. It's coming up with bullshit. Like, history was remade with his mouth. I don't know. Should have recorded the comment. I saw the fucking
I couldn't
document.
believe that they were talking about all those changes, and then in the next sentence, they didn't do the research on the penal code changes.
Wait, what did they say?
I may be misheard, but they were y'all were talking about the penal code changes and like times and fines and whatnot, and then Hart followed that up by saying that they hadn't done enough research, or they didn't do the research, or they needed to do the research to explain.
Yeah, I feel like I'm asking for more than what's reasonable, but what I'm doing is I'm calling out their lying. Is that if truly they spent 3 weeks, quote unquote, working on this, which I don't believe, is that, do I believe that the collective of the DOJ opened and ended this thing over the course of 3 weeks? Sure. But how is there no document that they know how to grab? That means neither Weiss or Hart did it. Is it conceivable? And that it goes to you too, Doc. Can you conceive that if a topic was brought up of this level of significance, you wouldn't have at least an idea where to pull the receipts?
Yeah, it's very strange that they got no clue where they keep anything.
Yeah,
it's like it's a very significant update to the penal code. You really should have records handy, even if it was 3 months ago.
At minimum, you should be like, oh yeah, I think like if I were to use a relationship with us, oh yeah, I think Michael worked on it. Give me a second. There it is, right? Like at least the name, at least who was the main person running it, right? Clearly, it's not going to be all 6. No one does that. That's not. I mean, maybe they do. It doesn't make any sense. Normally, there's like going to be someone in charge of making sure it all gets done. Who is that, right? Where would it get kept? We've got it on all our legislation in our email system, right? It just when it comes to the PD, if someone's working on one of your cases, you know they're gonna have it, right? Like imagine like I don't know what's like a big shit happening right now. Like
if you take these, say the plague stuff going on.
The plague stuff.
Working that case.
Yeah, it'd be like, hey, can you imagine if I went to the chief and I'm like, hey, who do I talk to on the plague? Who's running the investigation, right? And it's like, well, I don't know. I'm sure there's some cops working on it. I hear it's bad, It's like, okay, who is it? Oh, I don't know. I got to ask the cops. I don't know if they work here still. They might, it's there somewhere. I like, what the fuck?
It's like, in a court case, right? Almost where, a officer may be referencing an investigative report, right? And then when asked why that's not in evidence or where it can be accessed, you're like, well, I don't know. Well, let me look for it. I'll get back to you later.
I don't.
Shit just doesn't fly.
It just screams liar, liar, pants on fire to me, right? Like I'm sure there was meetings. There were not diligent meetings. They were not efficient meetings. I doubt any methodology was used. And right now they've put the entire state into a really shitty position. It's so bad that I don't know what to do. I really don't. And I'm going to underline this. I've been witness to 3 crews in the last, I want to say month or so, pretty much fall apart. And those are the ones that I know. And while I am by no means, and I said the same thing to Billy, by no means am I going to stand here and be like, hey, criminals should be able to do crime. There's a more dangerous thing that happens when those little crews fall over, right? Because number one, all those crews aren't doing crime, right? First and foremost. They might be a biker crew, right? 15 of them, maybe some of like 1%ers. Some of them might do it, right? Some of them might work other jobs. Why are they falling apart? Because literally three of them do a crime and now they're so in the fucking hole. They're fucked. They're done. There is no way out because they don't have access to the systems that the big crews have, right? Whatever it is, doing moonshine or hitting some like $1 million bank or whatever. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, then you add on the fact that these small crews will end up consolidating into the bigger crews, just making
Exactly.
it worse for us.
They become. I'm glad you see that, Doc. Genuinely, that's the real problem, and that conglomerate is way more dangerous to the state, way more dangerous to the police department, because those 12, 6 decided to, go back to Bermuda or whatever. The other 6 became grinders. You know what the grinders doing? Making the money to get the class 2s to shoot the cops, because now they have that power to make sure that the PD doesn't get them, right? As opposed to, that group of 12 that might not have a hyper super car and 6 of them and bleed you dry, right? It's a financial death penalty over their head. I don't know. Anyways. Oh, boy.
What was that one, or what was it, $5 million in fines?
Oh,
there was a
Manor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Marlo was talking about it, or somebody was talking about it. And it was just like, anything at that scale, like you said, is a financial death penalty to anyone.
There are certain parts of this conversation that I think is inherently going to be weird. There's no other way to chop it. And I'm not saying this to you, Serenade, but I'm about to say something, is, that is more than what Lang got.
Yeah, for triple homicide. It's more than double.
Yep. Now, I'm not saying Lang should have gotten hit harder, but it kind of speaks at how fucked that situation on Grove was. Should they have shot cops? Absolutely not. But in San Andreas, bruh, there is something fucked about that. You know what I mean? There's, I fear to ask how they individually feel about that entire situation, because it wouldn't surprise me if some of them got hit with something that hard and now are I don't know,
debating if it's worth their time being in the city.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, go elsewhere. Have a more relaxing life.
Yeah.
Come here, Chris.
Anyways, I don't know. I think how I feel about it is the problem is they are a political party, and they presented themselves as such today. And I think we're so far across the table from ideology. You pack on all the egregious things that have sort of occurred. I don't know. I don't really know what forward movement looks like, right? I don't know what plan can make things move forward. I think some good came out of it in that now they understand that legislation. The problem is they function on bad faith, goldfish memory, and not writing things down. So while what might come out of this is the underlining nature is that they can't add shit without legislation or through case law, we may still not see that come to play. And I'm scared about how they were cherry picking what the governor said, because that screams to me we may just randomly have legislation popping up again, which was already a fight we fought first and second term, right? Because I don't think they know the difference between what is and is not a judicial matter. I don't know if they can discern the difference or what the steps would look like to achieve it.
Yeah. It's a terrifying rabbit hole to go down there.
Yeah.
I was very discouraged, at least, by the tone in which they were speaking with. From what I witnessed, at least, the entire conversation essentially was defensive instead of constructive, and that was
agreed,
incredibly discouraging. Because clearly, to anybody who's observing this, right, and who has fought the battles like you have, right, and the rest of your cabinet, and the little part that I've been part of, there's obviously glaring issues. So if you take a wholly defensive stance on everything, that how can you make an argument for good faith at that point?
I don't know. I think the conversations are going to get going. I'm reconsidering this senator role. Maybe I'm going to ask the governor for a job. You know, let me just pass legislation occasionally, and you rubber stamp it. You pull me out if you need to. You know, maybe that's what's needed. If I just, oh my God, all I want, if I could take a magic wand, we'd finally create that criminal code. Be good for everybody.
That I can agree with.
Open it up. What robberies? Why are robberies bad? What is being protected? What does first-degree robbery consist of? What are the things that it does not consist of? What is this? What is that? Boom, boom, boom. I mean, it's but I don't know. I'm gonna go marinate a bit. Yeah. But anyways, gentlemen, you have a good day.
Have a good night, Nino.
You too, Nino. Take care.
Maybe I should just ask for a fucking job. It's fucking crazy.